My husband suddenly told me to leave our house because my parents live there. I was surprised and confused. He threatened divorce if I argued. Lately, he'd been distant, and I had my own complaints. I pay all the living expenses, $1,800 a month, but he seemed to forget that. I couldn't believe he wanted me out. He said his parents wouldn't be comfortable with me there. I didn't understand, but agreed to leave and take my things. He was happy when I agreed and left. I called a resale shop right away. My name's Emily. I live with my husband, Robert, who's a bit older than me. We met through friends and hit it off right away. One day, we hung out together and Robert mentioned he wanted to be a voice actor. His voice was really nice and I liked listening to him. We swapped numbers and decided to spend more time together. Eventually, we started dating without really talking about it. I was young and just out of college, so maybe I liked the idea of being with someone older and more experienced. It felt like a grown-up romance to me. My best friend Ashley was worried about me dating someone 5 years older than me. But I told her it was okay because lots of people have relationships with an age gap these days. I really liked Robert, and he liked me too, so I wasn't concerned. After dating for about 3 years, Robert brought up the idea of getting married. I'd already told my parents about him, including the age difference, so they were curious to meet him. With all this talk, I wondered when he'd propose. He ended up popping the question during one of our relaxed hangouts at my apartment. It wasn't the most romantic setting, but it felt like Robert, and I was happy with it. When Robert proposed, I said, "Sure, let's get married." It was a bit casual, maybe for both of us. After that, we visited each other's parents, but honestly, I didn't click with Robert's family. When we went to his family's house, it was filled with what seemed like old stuff, maybe antiques, but they looked like replicas or fake pieces to me. When we entered the living room and met Robert's parents, they were wearing expensive branded clothes and flashy jewelry. They seemed like a typical rich couple. It was clear our tastes and values didn't match. Robert's mother even made a rude comment about my appearance, which shocked me. But I figured as long as Robert and I were happy, I didn't have to deal with his parents too much. After we got married and moved into our condo, Robert seemed anxious one day. He asked about a woman in a blue dress at our wedding. I was confused. I replied, "There were a few guests in blue dresses, so I'm not sure who you mean." Robert clarified, "The one who gave a speech as your best friend. Was it Ashley?" Realizing I said, "Yes, Ashley wore a blue dress." Robert sighed, "So it was Ashley. Why are you so interested in Ashley?" I inquired, noticing his flustered demeanor. Robert explained, "Oh, it's nothing serious. I thought I saw someone who looked like her the other day, and it reminded me of her speech at our wedding." His sudden interest in Ashley puzzled me, but before I could ask more, he chuckled and brushed it off, retreating to his room. Later, Ashley called me with news. "Hey, Emily, my boyfriend's coming back to the US next year." Ashley had been dating her boyfriend since high school. They knew each other since elementary school, but he moved away in middle school. Since then, they wrote letters to each other. They reunited in high school, and that's when he confessed his feelings for her. I loved hearing Ashley's love stories. Despite her boyfriend working abroad for years, the relationship stayed strong. He'd been transferred to an international branch after working for a few years in the US. Even with the distance, they stayed close and communicated regularly. "Do you think he'll propose when he comes back, and then you'll get married?" I asked. Ashley laughed. "Emily, you always jump to conclusions. Just make sure to invite me to the wedding. I'll give a great speech. After your touching speech at your wedding, I'll need you to do the same at mine. But don't set the bar too high." We chuckled together over tea, knowing we could talk about anything, trusting each other completely. Whenever one of us had a problem, the other was always there to listen and support. Around this time, I noticed Robert was coming home later and later. "Working late again today," I remarked. "Yeah, you don't think I should work just because we're married," Robert responded. Even though we were married, Robert still pursued his dream of becoming a voice actor. He worked part-time jobs to support his studies, but didn't see immediate results. All the money he earned went into his voice acting classes, so I covered our living expenses. Because of this, we couldn't say much together. After a while, I realized Robert wasn't willing to give up on his dream for our family's sake. I couldn't shake off my worries about Robert working so much overtime. His long hours added to my concerns. "Hey, it seems like you've been working a lot lately. Aren't they making you do too much overtime, especially for a part-time job? I voiced my worry. I've got it under control. More money never hurts. Just focus on yourself, Robert replied sharply, shutting down the conversation. By this point, Robert had stopped using my name and only referred to me as you. When we got married, I thought he'd speak to me kindly and often, but after the wedding, his words became harsh most of the time. His once gentle, deep voice now sounded rough, likely from drinking too much. Aspiring voice actors need healthy throats, so I worried about his well-being, but he didn't seem to care. Gradually, he started avoiding me, even ignoring me at home. That's when Ashley called, wanting to talk. Since I had my own worries, I suggested meeting up. We chose a karaoke booth to chat privately. Ashley seemed cautious, picking a room where she could see the staff from the door. Why did you choose this room specifically? I asked. Yes, I chose this spot because I wanted the staff to keep an eye out for any suspicious individuals lurking nearby. Ashley explained. Suspicious person. Is that related to what you wanted to talk about? I asked. Ashley nodded, explaining that she felt like someone had been following her since she quit her job a month ago. Even on her days off, she sensed someone trailing her. She chose a room where the staff could easily see to prevent the person from eavesdropping on our conversation. Have you spoken to the police about this? I inquired. I tried, but since there's no actual contact, they can't do much. What about your boyfriend? He's coming back in a month. I thought I'd discuss it with him too, but I wanted to first talk to you, someone close by, Ashley explained. Ashley hadn't seen her stalker clearly because she was too scared. She didn't know if it was a man or a woman. So I decided to keep an eye out and identify the person following her. Through that, I discovered who it was. Although I couldn't talk to Ashley about my relationship issues with Robert, it turned out that the one stalking her was none other than my husband, Robert. He claimed to be working late every day, but he would actually wait near Ashley's workplace after his shift ended and follow her when she left. It was shocking to realize that someone so close to me was scaring my best friend. When I discovered the truth, I was devastated. The expression on Robert's face while he followed Ashley was chilling. He had this creepy, unsettling grin. I had fallen in love with and married this man. But in that moment, all the love I felt for him vanished instantly. I confided in Ashley and urged her to move as soon as possible. With the help of her coworkers, she arranged for someone to drive her from the underground parking lot to her new place. After Ashley and I took these precautions, Robert's frustration grew, and one day that frustration boiled over. Since my parents will be staying here, you need to go back to your parents' house, Robert suddenly announced, convinced he was making sense. Do you have an issue with that? If you disagree, I'm okay with getting a divorce, he added, starting to assert his position. While I had many complaints about him and had even considered divorce, I didn't think he could just throw me out of our home. After all, I'm the one paying $1,800 for our monthly expenses. I wondered if Robert even remembered that as I looked at him skeptically, his patience wore thin as he lost his temper. Just leave already. My parents can't move in if you're still here. Why do I have to be the one to leave? I don't understand it at all, Robert exclaimed. But I replied, fine, I'll take everything I purchased with me. As soon as I agreed, Robert told me to hurry up and walked away. I wasted no time and contacted a local buyback service. The following day, they arrived at our apartment. Initially, Robert seemed smug, assuming I was leaving. However, his expression turned to shock as he watched them evaluate all the furniture and appliances. Once they finished assessing everything except what was in Robert's room, a staff member handed me a quote. The total value is $22,000, they informed me. Without hesitation, I signed the document and said, okay, go ahead and sell everything. Robert, suddenly realizing the situation, grabbed my arm. Wait, why are you selling everything? My parents are supposed to live here. How will they manage without furniture? I pulled away from his grasp. What do you mean? When we got married, you told me you were broke because of your acting classes. You practically begged me to cover the rent, furniture, and living expenses. I never realized you were that broke. I feel deceived. Remember the $1,800 monthly expenses I've been paying. From now on, you'll cover that. And with your parents moving in, I'm sure it'll be even more, I stated firmly. Robert's face turned pale, but he quickly tried to regain his composure. Thought you could bring up money and I'd back out of the divorce? Who do you think you are? I've already found a wealthy woman, Robert said defensively. As I processed Robert's revelation about his close relationship with a wealthy woman, it dawned on me that he might have been referring to his stalker-like behavior towards Ashley. If that was his idea of being close, then Robert was seriously deluded. Ashley indeed came from a wealthy family. Her grandfather was a successful businessman, and her father now runs the family business. Ashley was the epitome of a perfect heiress, yet she never flaunted her wealth. She lived modestly like me and our friends, and nobody judged her based on her family's money. It seems Robert had learned about Ashley's affluent background and decided she'd be a better match for him. Could he really believe that wealth determined someone's worth, especially when it came to marriage? That thought infuriated me. However, I knew Ashley would never consider marrying Robert. Ashley's longtime boyfriend, whom she's been with since high school, is returning to the States soon. They'll probably get married, I stated. Robert was stunned to hear that he wasn't considered close to Ashley and that she found his behavior creepy. But I always walked Ashley home, he insisted. You should consider yourself lucky you weren't reported to the police, I retorted. But I didn't know she had a boyfriend. He's been abroad, Robert protested. They've been pen pals since elementary school and apparently talk almost every day. And unlike you, who's only been working part-time jobs, her boyfriend is a successful man recognized even by her father, I asserted firmly. Robert looked defeated as I spoke. Once the buyback workers had taken all the furniture and appliances, he seemed to regain some composure. I guess you're all I have left. You'll support my dream of becoming a voice actor forever, right? He asked, trying to strike a charming pose. I gave him a cold stare and replied, Excuse me. I've already visited a divorce lawyer and started the process. Let's communicate through our attorneys from now on. Perhaps thinking I still harbored feelings for him, Robert clung to my waist. Don't say things like that. Haven't we been getting along all this time? He pleaded. Getting along? Ever since you found out about my best friend Ashley being a wealthy heiress, you've been distant and started hanging around her. I realized marrying you was a mistake right after I said, I do, I declared. Robert broke down in tears, behaving like a little boy despite being older than me by 5 years. Seeing him cry like a child only made my already diminishing affection for him plummet even further. I can't stand being in the same room with you anymore. Just stop it. Oh, and by the way, I informed your uncle, who owns this apartment we're renting, about our divorce, I added. My uncle? You know he's strict, right? Robert exclaimed. Well, I've been covering all the rent and living expenses until now. So when I mentioned that you might struggle to afford it if I leave, he said he'd find work for you. That also means I won't be able to continue my voice acting studies, I explained. You hardly ever practice anyway. Maybe it's time to face reality. And if you try to approach Ashley again, I'll report you to the police right away. Goodbye, I stated firmly. I left the house with a firm resolve to never look back. My immediate plan was to return to my parents' house. But I also considered finding a new place closer to my job if the opportunity arose. As for Robert, it appeared his uncle followed through on his promise and found him a job at his company. Soon after, Robert's parents, who had been planning to rely on their son's marriage to the wealthy heiress, also moved into the apartment and began working for the uncle's company. It seemed like taking advantage of others ran in the family. I felt relieved to have escaped from such a toxic environment. While age difference didn't matter much to me, I realized the importance of choosing my next partner more carefully. On a brighter note, after everything with Robert had settled, I received a wedding invitation from Ashley herself. She introduced me to her longtime boyfriend, and I genuinely wished them all the happiness in the world. While my first marriage didn't work out, I hoped that Ashley's marriage would be a lasting and happy one for many years to come. After my divorce from my husband was finalized, I moved in with my daughter in Italy. About 6 months later, something unexpected happened. It was my day off, and I was relaxing at home with Natalie when I got a call from my mother. She told me that my ex-husband and his mother had shown up at my parents' house uninvited. I quickly got dressed and went over there. When I arrived, I found my ex-husband and his mother sitting on the sofa in the living room, waiting for me. I had no clue why they were there. Why are you here at my parents' house? I asked. My ex-husband, John, surprised me by saying, I want you to return the money you owe me. My name is Aaron. I'm a 40-year-old office worker. I was married to John for 14 years, and our daughter, Natalie, was born around the time we got married. She's now in the 8th grade. We were a happy family, and I felt sure that we would always have a loving home together. I met John on a blind date and was instantly drawn to his friendly, kind, and cheerful nature. He liked me too, and we stayed in touch throughout high school. We shared our contact details and started dating. After a few dates, a year later, he proposed and we got married. I loved him deeply and was thrilled when he asked me to marry him. I had a close group of friends from high school, and we always came together for big events. When I told them I was getting married, they were all excited and congratulated me. They all came to our wedding and talked about wanting to get married too. Over time, one by one, all my friends from the group got married, and eventually, everyone in our circle was married. We laughed and joked about how our group of friends had all suddenly become adults, with everyone now being married. Then, when I got pregnant, my friends started getting pregnant too, and before long, we had turned into a group of moms. It felt like we were all going through life together, and I knew we would stay close friends forever. I was happy being both a wife and a mother. I also enjoyed my job. After college, I started working in the planning and development department of a big company, and my days were very busy. The job was challenging but very rewarding, and I learned something new every day. One of my mom friends, who stayed at home, once told me, "You're really a workaholic, Erin, but you also have a great family life. It's like you have 2 lives or something." My friend says I'm a very strong woman, but I really wish I had the endless energy of a strong man. Both John and Natalie helped me unwind and relax at home after a long day at work. When I got home, I would say, "I'm home." Natalie would respond with a cheerful, "Oh, Mommy, welcome home." When she was younger, she would greet me with a big smile and a hug, which made all my tiredness disappear for the day. John would also help me relax. After Natalie was born, John quit his job and started working part-time so I could continue working at my company. He took a job at a cafe and took care of picking up and dropping off Natalie. When I came home, he always had dinner ready. After a long day at work, it's tough to cook, so coming home to a hot meal was a huge relief. John's cooking helped me feel relaxed and refreshed. I would take baths with Natalie and we chat about our day. My life was fulfilling both at work and at home. I could manage it all because John and Natalie were so supportive of my job. Their kindness made me even more dedicated and passionate about my work, and as I achieved good results, I got promoted. With the promotion, I started working more overtime and often came home quite late. By then, Natalie was older and understood the demands of my job, so she could handle some things on her own. John also began working more hours at the cafe. Lately, I've been enjoying exploring different coffee shops and buying their coffee beans. I picked up some today, along with cakes from a new bakery. I suggested we have them with coffee. John has really gotten into coffee. He's been learning about roasting beans and trying different types at his cafe job. That's why he makes such great coffee at home. John and Natalie were both very understanding about my dedication to work, but I didn't notice that our family was slowly starting to drift apart. I first realized something was wrong when Natalie came to me with a concern. "What's up? You wanted to talk about something," I asked her. "Well, the other day, when I went to see a movie with friends from school, I saw Dad with another woman," she said. I was shocked. "What?" Natalie continued. "They weren't holding hands or anything, but they seemed a bit close. Lately, I've noticed Dad talking a lot on the phone before you get home. Sometimes he's so focused on his phone that he doesn't really listen to me. He looks happy while on his phone. At first, I thought he was texting or talking to you, but after seeing him with that woman, I'm starting to wonder if he was talking to her instead." Natalie looked really sad as she spoke. She was already in middle school and sensitive to these kinds of issues, so I knew she wouldn't be able to handle this alone. I was also shocked. The thought that John, who I believed always put Natalie first, might be having an affair was heartbreaking. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I didn't realize we were making you feel this way. I've been too focused on work, haven't I?" Natalie reassured me. "No, it's okay that you work hard, Mom. Don't feel bad about that." I was grateful for her understanding words. "Thank you, Natalie. I'll talk to your dad about this. If it turns out he's having an affair, I think I'll have to get a divorce. Is that okay with you?" She nodded. "I don't like the idea of Dad having an affair. Just knowing that and still being with him would make me feel bad." Seeing Natalie so upset made me realize how much I had neglected my family. I knew I needed to get to the bottom of this issue, especially since Natalie had the courage to bring it up. I hired a private investigator to look into John's possible affair. The results were shocking. John was indeed having an affair, just as Natalie said, and there was photographic evidence to prove it. What stunned me the most was who his affair partner was: Stacy, one of my high school classmates and a member of our mom's group. I was more surprised by this betrayal from a friend I trusted than by John's affair itself. Stacy, a stay-at-home mom and the last to marry in our group, had a young child of her own. Yet she was involved with John and neglecting her own child. When I saw the evidence, I was overwhelmed and couldn't move for a while. If I hadn't been alone in my room, Natalie might have stumbled upon those photos, causing even more turmoil in our family. I wasn't ready to confront John yet, and I definitely couldn't let Natalie see these pictures. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. Then, another friend from the mom's group told me she had changed jobs, which gave me the idea to suggest a get-together. I figured it would be a good chance to see Stacy without her knowing I was aware of the affair. The get-together was planned for 3 weeks later. During that time, I quickly hired a lawyer and began preparing for the divorce. I briefly informed Natalie about what I had discovered and that her dad and I would be getting a divorce. We spent our days off together looking for a new apartment. The day of the get-together finally arrived. I started by asking my friend about her new job, and then we all shared updates about our lives. Stacy still didn't seem to know that I was aware of her secret, and we had a normal conversation. "Everyone's working, so it's good that things are changing," Stacy said. "I'm just a housewife, so I'm stuck in the same routine." "Well, you don't have to work, Stacy, because you have a husband who supports you," one of my friends replied. "I do appreciate my husband, but sometimes I feel a little bored," Stacy admitted. It was time to confront her about the affair. "So, is that why you're having an affair with other people's husbands?" I asked. Stacy and the other friends froze at my comment. Aaron, what do you mean by that?" Stacy asked, her face going pale. "Well, it seems that Stacy is having an affair with my husband John," I said. "What? No way. You must be joking," the other friend said, trying to defend Stacy. Since my friends were protecting her, Stacy took advantage of it. "That's right, Aaron. What are you talking about all of a sudden?" "You must have confused me with someone else," Stacy said, trying to deflect. "Oh, really?" I replied. "Then why don't you all take a look at this?" I pulled out the photos from my bag and laid them out on the table. My friends stared at the photos in shock. "Oh my gosh," they gasped. "Stacy, why?" they asked. Stacy, clearly caught off guard by the evidence, covered her mouth with her hand. "I'm so shocked. Why did you have an affair with my husband?" Stacy seemed to realize there was no way out. "I'm really sorry. I happened to walk into the cafe where your husband works. I didn't know he worked there at first, but I started going there regularly. My husband provides for me, but he's been neglecting me since we got married. I was feeling lonely." Stacy started to cry as she spoke, but even though she had her reasons, having an affair is unacceptable, especially with a friend's husband. I remained calm and composed, not letting her tears affect me. "I'm sorry to everyone else, but I need to tell Stacy that I'm going to pursue alimony from her," I said. "I also sent a certified letter about this to your mailbox today, Stacy. Your husband should have already seen it." "Oh no," Stacy said, looking worried. "How could he do something so terrible?" she asked, still in shock. "It's far worse to have an affair with a friend's husband when you're married and have a child of your own. You need to face the consequences and make amends for what you've done," I said. Stacy turned pale and nodded. One of my other friends added, "We really can't trust you anymore, Stacy." We left the restaurant, leaving Stacy behind. Now that I had dealt with her, it was time to confront John. I was pretty sure Stacy had already contacted him about what happened. When I got home, John met me at the door, looking panicked. "What have you done?" "I just got a call from Stacy. Are you really making our affair public? How could you be so terrible? You acted like a good husband, but you were cheating on me." "No, that's not." "But Stacy has a family too. How could you expose her like that? It's ridiculous." I responded, "It seems people who have affairs think alike. You believe that as long as the other person doesn't find out, it's not a big deal. But what you did was wrong, and it all needs to be revealed as part of your punishment. That's why I'm going to divorce you and seek alimony and child support." With clear evidence of the affair, John couldn't deny what happened and agreed to the divorce. However, he was hesitant about paying alimony and child support. When I hired a strong lawyer and made it clear that I was ready to take the case to court, he finally agreed to pay. So I divorced my ex-husband, sold a house we had been living in, and moved into a new apartment with Natalie. I also pursued alimony from both John and Stacy and received $30,000 from each. Additionally, I secured child support from John. Once everything was settled, Natalie and I started our new life together. The experience was very traumatic for me, but over time, my wounds began to heal. However, about 6 months later, another issue arose. I was relaxing at home with Natalie on my day off when I got a surprising call from my mother. She told me that my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law had shown up at my parents' house and forced their way in without permission. My father was out, so my mother called me in a hurry. I quickly got ready and went to my parents' house. When I arrived, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were sitting on the living room sofa waiting for me. I had no idea why they were there. "What are you both doing here at my parents' house all of a sudden?" I asked. My ex-husband then shocked me with his next words. "I want you to give me back the money you owe me." "Huh? I never borrowed any money from you. I paid $15,000 for our wedding, remember? You were the one in charge of the wedding, so that money was lent to you. Now that we're divorced, you're claiming it was all a fraud. Honestly, I could sue you for marriage fraud, but for now, all I want is that $15,000 back as a settlement." He made an unreasonable request. My ex-mother-in-law also insisted that I pay him as soon as possible. After the divorce, I knew that John had taken a full-time job at the cafe where he used to work, but the pay there wasn't much. It seemed he was struggling financially, which might explain his unreasonable demands. "Well, let me remind you that we both were equally involved in the wedding, and I paid more of our living expenses than you did. So $15,000 is just a small part of what I contributed. Don't bother me with such unreasonable demands." I tried to get them to leave, but they didn't budge. Just then, my father came home. He had apparently received a call from my mother and rushed back. "What are you guys doing here?" my father demanded. My ex-husband explained the same thing to my father, clearly afraid of him. My father listened quietly but was clearly furious and shocked by John's unreasonable demands. "It's your fault for having an affair in the first place. If you're going to make such outrageous demands, get out of here," my father said. He tried to kick them out, but my ex-husband fell to his knees and begged, "Please, Aaron, lend me money. Not only are you demanding alimony, but Stacy's husband is also after me and I can't afford it. Even $10,000 would help." It was shocking to see him begging for money in such a situation. I told him coldly, "No, I can't do that. Go home." But my ex-mother-in-law insisted, "You're also responsible for what happened. You should lend him the money." The situation was escalating, so my father said, "Fine, I'll get the money. Just wait here," and went to another room. "Hey, Dad, what are you doing?" I hurried after him, and my father grinned. "Well, I have plenty of money. Since we have it, why not give it to them?" he said, opening the closet and pulling out some cash. This should be interesting, I thought. My father put the bills in an envelope and handed it to John. Satisfied with the fake money, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law left with pleased expressions. As soon as they were gone, I locked the door and called the police. The two must have realized the money was fake as soon as they stepped outside because they came rushing back, banging on our front door. "Hey, what's going on? This is Monopoly money. I don't want this fake cash," John shouted angrily. I laughed and responded through the door. "Since we have so much money, I thought I'd share it with you." John exclaimed, "You've got to be kidding," and started banging even harder on the door, kicking it with his feet. They didn't realize their actions were only making things worse for them. As John and his mother were kicking the door, the police arrived and caught them in the act. Neighbors gathered around, and many witnessed John and his mother getting arrested. In the end, John didn't get any money but was fined for the arrest and had to pay for the damage to our front door. Additionally, one of the people who saw the arrest was a regular at the cafe where John worked, and news spread quickly. As a result, John was fired from his job. Now, John is struggling to find work and has moved back in with his parents. His in-laws are covering his alimony and child support payments for him. I've also filed a restraining order against my former in-laws. If anything happens, my family can call the police, and they will respond immediately. Now I'm happier than ever with Natalie. I'm committed to working hard and enjoying watching my daughter grow up. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. I divorced my husband because he cheated on me 3 years ago with my younger sister. They sent me an invitation to their wedding. My mother said she would attend, and I felt betrayed by her too. Then she said, "I'll do something fun, you just wait and see." I had a plan to punish the two of them. My name is Emma. My husband and I worked in the same company, and I was his boss. He was a bit unreliable but sincere and friendly. I was responsible for training him and teaching him the job. At first, he was nervous about the new work, but over time, we grew close. "Yuma, are you free on our next day off?" he asked me. I was surprised when he asked me out on a date, but I was excited to see how confident he was outside of work. It made my heart skip a beat. After that, we often went out together. "Emma, will you be my girlfriend?" he asked. 6 months after we officially started dating, he could handle his work all by himself. He had become a valuable part of our company. I felt as happy as if it were my own success when other bosses praised him. He then got promoted and moved to a different department. That's when he proposed to me. "Emma, I want you to marry me." "Yes, I'd be happy to," I replied. My parents and younger sister Kate immediately liked Liam, and our wedding went smoothly. Kate, who was the same age as Liam, got along with him right away. "You're so lucky to marry a kind man like Liam. It seems like people at work have high expectations for him, right?" Kate said. She had just broken up with her boyfriend and was yearning for marriage, always telling me how jealous she was of me. After our wedding, I continued working and taking care of the household, supporting Liam both at work and in our personal lives. At least I thought I was supporting him. About a year after our marriage, he started coming home later and later, and we hardly ever had dinner together. "Hey Liam, we haven't talked about work lately. Is everything okay?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong," he replied tersely. "But you've been coming home late every day. If there's anything I can do to help." "There isn't," he cut me off. He used to share everything with me, but recently he seemed annoyed whenever I brought up work. On his days off, he'd either sleep all day, claiming exhaustion, or head out to clear his mind. Feeling like we weren't spending enough quality time together, I made a suggestion to Liam. "Hey Liam, how about we go to a spa together during the next holiday?" My sister recommended a place to us. I suggested. "A spa, huh?" A spa is a place where we can relax and recharge our bodies and minds, especially from the stresses of work. Seeing Liam busy, I took the initiative to make a hotel reservation that included a spa. A week before our planned spa trip, I asked Liam, "What time should we leave next week for the spa?" "Huh? Oh, is the spa trip next week? I forgot to mention I have a business trip scheduled for that weekend." "What? But you've known of the spa trip for a while now." "Well, it's work, so I can't really change it, can I?" "I see." Liam's department seemed busier than ever with frequent business trips. It seemed like I had no choice but to give up on the spa trip this time too. As usual, Liam left early in the morning for his business trip. If things had gone as planned, we would be on our way to the spa together by now, I thought sadly. While feeling down, I received a phone call. It was from the hotel where I had booked a reservation. Despite sending a cancellation email, they didn't receive it due to an error and called to confirm our arrival time. That's right, I thought. I might as well invite Kate. I called my parents' house. But Kate had been out since morning and wouldn't be back soon. So as a last resort, I decided to invite my mother to the spa. Compared to my sister, I had almost given up on the idea that my mother would be able to go on such short notice. But surprisingly, she agreed. "Really? Is it okay to leave Dad alone?" I asked. "Right now, I'm more worried about you than your father," she replied gently. It seemed she had noticed I'd been feeling down lately and chose to join me on the trip. "Thanks, Mom." "I should be thanking you. I'm happy to be on a trip like this with you." I decided to make the most of the trip with my mother, which was a rare treat. However, as soon as we arrived at the hotel, my mother and I noticed something unusual. "Mom, look at that." At the hotel, we spotted Liam, who was supposed to be away on his business trip. He was walking closely with another woman, both looking happy as they entered the same hotel where we were supposed to stay. As they walked in, the woman turned her face towards us for a brief moment. "You've got to be kidding," I whispered in disbelief. The woman with Liam was my sister Kate. After that moment, shock took over and I have vague memories of how I made it back home. My mother made me some tea, which eventually helped me to start calming down. He had been lying to me, and not just Liam, Kate had deceived me too. After calming down, I called Liam's department. As I suspected, they hadn't been assigning business trips or much overtime for years. When I shared with my mother the days Liam came home late or was away on supposed business trips, it turned out Kate wasn't home on those days either, a detail that struck me. All those times he was late or away on trips, he was meeting Kate, wasn't he? I realized with a surge of anger rather than sadness. With the truth revealed, anger consumed me. "Mom, I'm divorcing Liam. I don't want to see Kate, so I won't visit home for a while." She stayed silent but understood my decision. I made all the preparations just before Liam returned. I organized the divorce papers, arranged a new contract for my own house, packed my things, and moved into a temporary apartment before settling into the new place. At our home, I left a letter along with the divorce papers for Liam. I specified that all legal matters, including alimony, would be handled through my lawyer, and I blocked all forms of communication with him. To keep my new address private from Liam and Kate, I didn't inform my parents. Since we worked at the same company, we occasionally crossed paths, but I avoided any interaction with him completely. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Liam quickly agreed to the divorce. He didn't disclose the reason to anyone, but our colleagues seemed to gather it from my behavior and wisely avoided discussing the matter. 3 years went by with me keeping my distance from both Liam and my family. One evening after work, I found my mother waiting for me in my room. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked. "I have something to show you," she replied, holding out an invitation. "It's from Liam and Kate." To my surprise, Kate had left our family home and moved in with Liam. I had considered the possibility they might marry, but I never expected them to actually have a wedding and invite our parents. "So, Mom, are you planning to go?" I asked her. "Of course I am," she answered firmly. I understood that I was the only one who still couldn't forgive them. It seemed they knew this, which was why they had only invited our parents to the wedding. Having distanced myself from Liam and my parents, I felt I had no right to object. Seeing my sadness, my mother smiled reassuringly and said, "Don't worry. I'm not going because I forgive them. Just wait and see." On the day of the wedding, my mother video called me. "I don't want to see their faces," I said, almost hanging up. But I remembered my mother's earlier words and stayed on the call. The screen displayed a slideshow that was being presented. The MC began introducing the slides. This slideshow was created by the bride's mother. She gathered photos from her beloved daughter's birth to the present and created this presentation, the MC announced. I was taken aback that my mother, who wasn't very tech-savvy, had put together such a slideshow. It stirred up a mix of emotions inside me. "Mom, you went through all this effort for Kate." I wondered, feeling a wave of sadness. But then something caught my attention on the screen. Wait, this isn't Kate, I realized. The slideshow began with a photo of myself as a newborn baby. "So cute, there's a resemblance to Kate somehow," the guests commented in a relaxed atmosphere as they watched the slideshow. Kate's expression grew tense. The MC continued, "Since she was young, the bride has always been dedicated to her family. She excelled as a student and successfully entered her desired university. Upon starting her career, she became a highly reliable employee at the company." Kate's friends and colleagues, who recognized moments from her student days and workplace, began to chatter excitedly. "Hey, isn't that a photo from the welcome party at University J? Kate didn't attend such a prestigious university, did she? Wait, isn't that a photo from the company's welcome party? Hold on closer inspection it looks completely different. Wait, if this isn't Kate." Liam also appeared to have noticed. "What the hell is this? This isn't Kate." Unaware of the bride and groom's shocked expressions, the MC continued to progress through the slides. And then she met the groom, Liam, at the company. According to the bride's mother, she initially trained Liam when he joined the company. Eventually, the two got married. Following this introduction were photos from my wedding with Liam. The MC couldn't hide their confusion, sensing something was amiss. They fell silent. It was then that my mother stepped forward and took the microphone. "Allow me to take over from here and explain," she said calmly as she advanced the slides. Even after marriage, my daughter supported him both personally and professionally. However, as Liam became increasingly busy, he struggled to find time for her. So my daughter planned a spa trip to help him relax. "Wait, please." Kate cried desperately, her face pale, trying to halt my mother. Ignoring Kate's attempts, my mother continued with the slides. The next photo showed Liam and Kate entering the spa hotel together, looking very close. Finally, photos of the bride and groom appeared, and both the MC and the guests fell silent. Liam and Kate appeared even more pale. But Liam declined my daughter's spa trip invitation, citing a business trip he had to attend. He claimed it couldn't be helped due to work commitments. My daughter invited me instead, and it was during that trip that we discovered his affair. With those words, the room erupted into chatter and speculation prompted by my mother's revelation. Wait, an affair? And this wedding is for Kate and Liam. Could this wedding be based on their affair? But why would Kate's mother? To address the guests' inquiries, my mother continued in a measured tone. Liam swore to marry my beloved daughter Emma and promised to make her happy. Instead, he betrayed her by having an affair with her own sister, Kate. "Mother, please stop. Today is supposed to be my wedding day. Can't you celebrate my happiness?" Kate cried, pleading with our mother to halt. Ignoring Kate's pleas, my mother stared coldly at her and replied, "I've always wanted you to be happy, but you were the one who shattered that first. Emma always considered not just herself, but the happiness of our family. What about you, Kate? Have you ever considered how much Emma would be hurt by your actions? Well, she always seems so content. It's not fair. So instead of being happy for your family, you just got jealous, huh?" My mother-in-law retorted sharply. "Mother-in-law, please stop. She's your precious daughter too, isn't she? Can't you celebrate our new beginning? Why are you doing this?" Kate pleaded, clearly distressed. "I can't accept someone as dishonest as you into our family. Today's ceremony made that clear to me. If you truly wanted to start anew with Kate, why didn't you invite a single person from your own company? If you're going to have such a grand wedding, shouldn't you apologize to Emma? It's selfish to invite me and her father without making any effort like that." "But Emma has been ignoring me all this time," Liam protested. "Of course she has, after what you've done. It's only natural," my mother-in-law replied firmly. "But that's all in the past now, isn't it? Do you think her wounds will heal in just 3 years? And do you think you can regain our trust in such a short time? Don't be ridiculous." My mother's voice echoed angrily as she and my father left the wedding venue. I could hear her speaking through the phone. "Did you see that, Emma?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "I'm sorry for bringing up painful things. I couldn't stand seeing those two act as if nothing happened," she explained. "No, thank you. I feel relieved. It's like you said everything I wanted to say," I admitted. "That's right, Emma. You always keep everything to yourself. I thought it was too kind of you not to tell your colleagues the reason for your divorce." Later, my mother sent me a recording of her conversation with Liam from the wedding. Indeed, as she had said, time doesn't easily heal such wounds. Moreover, Liam showed no signs of remorse, dismissing it all as a thing of the past. I decided to enact my revenge by exposing Liam during a company presentation. I signed up quickly when I saw he was scheduled to speak and soon found myself in a conference room. When it was Liam's turn, his supervisor, unaware of his remarriage, commented, "Liam, you seem even more motivated today, freshly married." "Yes, I'm dedicated to doing my best for my family," he replied cheerfully. He must have known I was present, but that only fueled my determination. I played the recorded audio I received from my mother. The room was startled by the sudden noise from the recording. As they learned about his affair with my sister during our marriage, accusations started flying. "Liam, didn't you claim the divorce was due to different values?" I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Oh really? Did you say something like that?" "Well, I can't comprehend a value system that includes cheating with your wife's own sister. I apologize for bringing personal matters into this important internal presentation. As of today, I have decided to resign. I have endured this because I value this company, but I cannot continue working alongside him any longer." Just as I prepared to leave, the board members intervened to halt my departure. Wait a moment, Emma. You're a crucial asset to our company. If anyone should leave, it should be Liam. Huh? But I was considered to have a promising future here. We held high hopes for you in the past, but recently your attire has been less formal and you seem less focused. It appears you have lost the problem-solving abilities you once demonstrated. We don't have the same expectations for you as before. Kate, who had always been inept at housework and had done little even while living with our parents, became a full-time housewife after marrying Liam. Apparently, she left most of the household chores for him to handle. Without my advice to guide him through work challenges, Liam began causing more problems. Word of his affair with his wife's sister spread throughout the company, damaging his reputation. During a board meeting, it was decided that I would stay with the company while Liam would be transferred to a remote location with the expectation of eventual layoff. Kate, who had been enjoying a comfortable life as a housewife on Liam's earnings, quickly abandoned him upon discovering the affair and moved on to another man. Unfortunately for her, the new man turned out to be a typical freeloader burdened with debt. Now she is struggling, working 2 jobs day and night to make ends meet. As they say, what goes around comes around. When you do wrong, it eventually catches up with you. Watching Liam and Kate face the consequences of their actions, I finally felt ready to begin a new chapter in my life. I'm a top banker, so I think I deserve to remarry a beautiful and capable woman. Being with someone like you just brings me bad luck. I'm divorcing you because you don't earn any money. What about our child? What will happen to her? I asked. Take care of Emily yourself. I'm having a new child with my girlfriend, he responded. My husband, who had left me and our daughter Emily, and even got his girlfriend pregnant, announced he was remarrying. Fed up with his behavior, I decided to get a divorce. After the divorce was finalized, I still had some important things to deal with. When I went to his workplace, I saw my husband and his girlfriend, both smirking as they walked towards me. Missed me so much you came all the way to my office. You're just a housewife with no money. Probably here to take some of the savings, right? He sneered. They looked in on me like I was trash, but I stayed calm and said, I came to withdraw $12 million. What? My husband was shocked when he found out I had won a big lottery prize and started begging for forgiveness. My name is Jennifer Brown. I'm 32 years old. Since I was a child, I dreamed of working in elderly care because I wanted to help others. After high school, I went to a vocational school for elder care and achieved my dream. Working as a caregiver was tough but fulfilling, especially when patients thanked me. One day, a coworker invited me to a social event where I met my future husband, Michael Brown. My first thought was that he was handsome. I wanted to talk to him, but he seemed quiet and maybe not into social gatherings. However, as we walked to the station together, we started chatting, and I discovered he was surprisingly talkative and enjoyable to be around. Michael was shy, not distant or uninterested. I found this contrast charming. We grew close quickly and eventually decided to get married. Later on, I found out through mutual friends that Michael had another girlfriend when we first met. Discovering Michael's double life was shocking, especially since we were already married by then. Despite this, I chose to believe that he truly loved and chose me for who I am. In the early days of our marriage, we had a lot of fun together. We enjoyed going to sports games and movies, soaking in the excitement of being newlyweds. One of our shared hobbies was buying lottery tickets. It all started when we stumbled upon a lottery booth during a sports event and bought our first sports lottery ticket out of curiosity. To our surprise, we won, probably beginner's luck. Although it wasn't a huge amount, it got us hooked, and we started buying small amounts regularly. We'd sometimes decide to buy a ticket if we felt lucky that day or if our horoscope seemed promising. This became one of the few hobbies we both enjoyed together. Around our 4th year of marriage, I started thinking about fertility treatments since we were struggling to have children. But then, unexpectedly, I became pregnant with our first child. Great job, Jennifer. We're finally going to be parents, Michael said, overwhelmed with joy and tears in his eyes when the pregnancy test showed positive. I'm so happy, but let's celebrate properly after we visit the OB/GYN. I'm nervous, but I have a feeling everything will be okay. Just a hunch, I replied. The next day, filled with nerves, we went to the OB/GYN. When the doctor confirmed the pregnancy on the ultrasound and said, "Congratulations, you're pregnant," I saw it with my own eyes. I was ecstatic. I immediately texted Michael from the waiting room. I'm pregnant. Just entered the 5th week. Once we're past the risky period, we need to tell both our parents, I messaged. He read it immediately and replied, Really? That's fantastic. I'm so happy. Thank you. Drive home safely, Jennifer. He usually took forever to reply, but this time he must have been really thrilled. I returned home, relishing in our joy. That night, we had so much to look forward to. Michael, do you hope for a boy or a girl? Tough call. I'd be happy with either, but if it's a girl, I might find it hard to let her go when she gets married. With a boy, we can play together a lot when he's little. Yeah, maybe, but if it's a girl, I'd love to talk about crushes and things like that with her. We enjoyed light-hearted conversations like this over dinner. Eventually, we found out the baby's gender. Pregnancy was tough, but with Michael's support, I had a happy and relatively smooth maternity experience. Time flew by, and I safely gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. We named her Emily. We talked about facing challenges together as a couple, but things changed after pregnancy and childbirth. I decided to quit my job as a caregiver, which had been physically demanding and involved night shifts, making it difficult to continue. This change drastically shifted Michael's attitude. When we were both working full-time, we shared household chores. But once I became a stay-at-home mom, he started saying things like, You were home all day, right? Why didn't you clean? And you have plenty of time. Make more elaborate meals. He started criticizing me more often. As his behavior changed, our marriage slowly lost its spark. We still shared the same bed, but there was no closeness between us. I'm only here because I have nowhere else to go. I don't want to be near you, he would say. I wanted Tevin to sleep somewhere else, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. We hardly had any real conversations anymore. When I tried to talk to him, he either wouldn't listen or would give indifferent responses. Hey, I watched this drama yesterday, I'd say. Aha, he'd reply. Listen, Emily did this today, I'd add. Sure, he'd respond. Our interactions dwindled down to brief exchanges like aha and sure, with no depth or interest from his side. He rarely engaged in conversation unless he was upset. Once, when he was angry, he said, What's with this meal? It's too bland. I can't eat this. I thought less seasoning would be healthier, I explained. Shh, you can't cook, you can't clean, useless at everything. Who else would have married you, huh? He often said. Eventually, he even started treating Emily, who was only 3 years old, coldly. Daddy, look, I drew this, she would say, showing him her drawing. So what? He would respond. No child could feel close to a father like that. Despite everything, I kept trying not to upset my husband and avoid arguments. Lately, though, I've been wondering, am I just a housekeeper disguised as a stay-at-home mom? At home, he treats us like that, but outside, he's a successful banker at a major bank. My friends even envy me, saying, Wow, you have a banker husband. You two are a power couple, and he seems so devoted to you, Jennifer. But that's just his public image. Once at a friend's wedding, he declared in front of everyone, Jennifer is amazing at cooking, cleaning, and laundry. She's a fantastic wife. My friends cheered, impressed. But the reality is different. He's indifferent towards Emily and me at home, behaving abusively. He's a completely different person outside, selfish and uncaring. He disappears for weekends without explanation, returns in the early hours, and never helps with household chores or childcare. During weekdays, I don't know when he finishes work or where he goes. He comes home late, and if I ask, he snaps. It's none of your business where I am or what I'm doing. Just be thankful that someone as successful as me brings money home. He even said, You're at home all day but can't even manage the household chores properly. Don't complain to someone like me, an elite. You've lost all your charm, not even looking like a woman anymore. His words shocked me, leaving me in tears the first time he said them. Despite everything, I tried numerous times to mend our relationship. However, with him rarely at home or in a bad mood early in the mornings, we grew increasingly distant, living like strangers under the same roof. People might think I should have divorced him sooner. Honestly, I'd often considered it myself, but could I, as a stay-at-home mom, raise Emily alone? Could I find a job if I started looking now? Would I be able to fulfill Emily's dreams like hobbies or college? Could I provide her with a comfortable life? These worries weighed heavily on my mind. One day, while I was alone at the supermarket doing our grocery shopping, I noticed a lottery booth tucked away in the corner with a sign that read "Lucky Day." As I stood there at the lottery booth, memories flooded back of the times when Michael and I used to buy tickets together whenever we saw that "Lucky Day" sign. Those were such good times, now seeming like a distant past. It struck me how much Michael had changed. Filled with a sense of desperation, I decided to buy a ticket on my own for the first time in a long while. Might as well, I thought to myself. I briefly considered telling my husband about the ticket. Perhaps if we won, it could bring back those carefree conversations we used to have, dreaming about our future plans and adventures together. Holding on to that faint hope, I headed back home. But as usual, my husband didn't return until after 10 p.m. After putting Emily to bed, I was sitting on the living room sofa watching TV when I received a call from my husband's phone. "Hello, what time will you be home?" I answered. "Is this Michael's wife?" A strange woman's voice replied. A chill ran down my spine, sensing something was wrong. Who is this?" I asked. "I'm Lily, Michael's girlfriend. Your husband is sleeping right next to me," the woman said. "I've wanted to talk to you. I love Michael and he loves me too. Honestly, he told me you're like a maid to him and he's done with you. I think he's going to ask for a divorce soon, so you should start preparing." The shock and betrayal hit me hard as I listened to her words. I was furious with my cheating husband, though sadly, it wasn't a surprise. I had suspected his infidelity for a while. He always came home late on weekdays, was absent on weekends, and was secretive with his phone. The lack of intimacy between us only fueled my suspicions. So when Lily, his mistress, spoke so confidently and unapologetically, it disgusted me to hear how casually she admitted to their affair. "Is that so? I need to hear this from Michael first. I'll hang up for now. We can discuss this more later," I managed to say, trying to keep my composure. "No, talking to Michael won't change anything. In fact, I'm pregnant. It's Michael's child. Please start the divorce process soon, for the sake of our baby," she insisted. Her words stunned me. "Pregnant? You must be lying." "It's true. Michael has promised to support me and the baby. As a successful banker, he plans to marry me and raise our child together. It's time for a wife swap. Can you send Michael's belongings over soon?" Her audacity stunned me. I had our precious daughter at home, and the thought of Michael flaunting himself as a successful banker sickened me. Too exhausted to argue or shout, I calmly asked, "All right, can you give me your address?" "Wow, you're surprisingly cooperative," she remarked. "The address is—" I noted it down and ended the call. Around midnight, Michael finally returned home. I confronted him about the call from his mistress, and he didn't hesitate to confess to the affair. "Yeah," she spilled everything. "I'm an elite banker, and I'm planning to marry Lily, who's beautiful and capable. I thought having someone like you, a gloomy stay-at-home mom, might be useful, but being with you just brings me bad luck. I'm divorcing you, a useless, unemployed woman." His words were like daggers piercing my heart. Bad luck? Useless? Just a stay-at-home mom. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But what about Emily, our daughter?" I asked, trying to stay strong. "Michael, what about Emily?" "You take care of Emily. I have a new child on the way with Lily. I'll pay alimony, of course. As a high earner, it's no problem for me, unlike you," he replied coldly. His complete lack of remorse and disregard for our daughter made me question if he had any humanity left. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I couldn't feel anything for a man like him anymore. I knew I had to protect Emily on my own. Michael, unprompted, began talking about Lily. "Apparently, she's a 24-year-old new employee, popular and beautiful. I'm leaving you for a young and cute girl like her to start a new life," he boasted, his eyes gleaming with pride. I couldn't even muster tears after being insulted and betrayed by both my husband and his mistress. I simply wished them nothing but misery. That day, Michael packed a few things and left, saying, "I'll send the divorce papers once everything's sorted." He never returned home after that, likely staying with Lily. I started preparing for the divorce process. I consulted a lawyer about alimony arrangements before officially filing, as I knew it was wise to be prepared. Following Lily's address, I sent Michael's belongings to replace and began packing to move back to my parents' house with Emily. While cleaning up, I found more of Michael's things and reached out to him. "I found more of your stuff while cleaning," I texted. "My mistake. I'll come pick it up tomorrow," was his casual reply. I handed over the divorce papers and Michael's belongings, feeling a mix of disbelief and disgust as I faced them both at my doorstep. Lily's words cut deep, her disregard for my feelings and the situation evident. "Nice to meet you, ex-wife. I'm feeling sick from the pregnancy. Did you sign the divorce papers? Can you hurry up and finish the divorce?" she said coldly. She was undeniably beautiful and much younger than me. Seeing Michael support her, pregnant with his child, only intensified my discomfort. All I wanted was for them to leave as soon as possible. "Here are the divorce papers and your belongings," I said tersely, handing them over. I handed over the signed divorce papers, and Michael snatched them, hastily scrawled his signature, and tossed them back at me. "There you go. Make sure to file them today," he said dismissively. Sure, I replied, trying to keep my composure. With that, they left, and I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing I had another important matter to attend to once the divorce was finalized. I received the alimony in a lump sum, which wasn't surprising given Michael's constant boasting about being an elite banker. A week later, I found myself at the bank where my ex-husband worked, handling an important task. Ignoring Michael, I focused on what I needed to do, but he couldn't resist taunting me. "Miss me, you really can't let go, can you?" he sneered, approaching with a smirk. Then Lily emerged from the back. "Oh, look who it is, the ex-wife. What are you here for, scraping together savings?" I was tired of their sarcasm. "No, I'm here to collect something." "What, $12 million? I declared, relishing the shock on their faces. "That's right. The lottery ticket I bought on a whim at the supermarket turned out to be a jackpot winner. When Michael and I used to buy tickets together, it was a fun hobby. We checked the results eagerly. But this time, since I bought it alone, I didn't expect much and casually checked online. Then I saw the message, 'Congratulations on your win.' At first, I thought it was a small prize, but as I scrolled down, I couldn't believe my eyes. $12 million. I counted the digits in disbelief. $12 million. I was stunned, staring at the screen in shock. That day, I was so overwhelmed that I could barely manage any housework or childcare. The next day, I opened my laptop to double-check, and yes, it was still $12 million. I read up on what to do after winning, still feeling like I was floating on air. It all seemed surreal. I even consulted a lawyer to understand if a lottery win before finalizing the divorce would be divided as assets. They assured me that since the divorce was due to Michael's actions and our marriage had already broken down, the winnings wouldn't be subject to division. When I explained this to both of them, they were in disbelief. "What? Why didn't you tell us? That should be split between us, right? It's not fair if you get all the money." Michael protested. "That's not possible. You cheated, got your mistress pregnant, and now you expect to claim my lottery winnings. It doesn't work that way. I've already confirmed it with a lawyer," I responded firmly. "No, that's a lie," Michael shouted, his voice filled with anger. "How the hell did you win that much? You never had this kind of luck when you were with me. It's not fair that you get to keep it all. Maybe being with a gloomy woman like me wasn't your problem after all. Maybe you were the one bringing down the luck," I shot back. Lily, clearly irritated, interjected, "What's wrong with this woman, Michael? Let's go. It doesn't matter how much money she has. Come on, let's leave." But to my surprise, Michael didn't move. Instead, he said something completely unexpected. "Jennifer, I'm sorry. Let's get back together. I was wrong to belittle you and have an affair. Let's start over." "What? What are you saying? You promised to support me and the baby. You said you loved me, and now you want to go back to your ex-wife," Lily exclaimed, her voice filled with hurt and disbelief. "But with $12 million, we could quit our jobs, buy a house, get a nice car, and travel the world. It would be amazing," Michael pleaded, his eyes fixed on the money. His words disgusted me. "You truly are the worst. Living with someone like you all these years makes me sick. I'm sorry for everything. I'll treat you better from now on, I promise. Please think about it," he said, grasping my arm tightly. I was so furious that I snapped, "Don't touch me." Startled by my outburst, Michael recoiled. Just then, someone from the back heard the commotion and stepped forward. "What's happening here, Michael?" It was the branch manager. Michael and Lily looked flustered by the unexpected interruption. "It's nothing, really," Michael stammered, clearly uncomfortable under the manager's scrutiny. "I heard everything from the staff. Are you sure there's nothing going on?" the branch manager questioned, his tone serious. Michael began to explain, but the manager interrupted sharply. I'll discuss your personal matters with Lily later, he said firmly. My ex-husband and Lily paled visibly. An affair, a pregnant mistress, and causing a scene in the bank. It was a messy situation. Tough luck, I thought. Then the branch manager turned to me. Ma'am, I apologize deeply for the discomfort this has caused you, he said sincerely. Michael and Lily followed suit, offering their apologies. It seemed obligatory, especially after the manager had expressed regret. Oh, it's fine, I managed to reply, feeling somewhat overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events. You're here to withdraw your big lottery win, right? Let me assist you, the branch manager offered graciously. With his help, I withdrew my winnings and overnight became a millionaire. Days later, my ex-husband bombarded me with calls. Initially, I ignored them, but eventually I reluctantly answered. Hello? Jennifer, thank God you picked up, he said urgently. What do you want? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Since that day, my boss has been furious. He says someone like me harms the bank's reputation. Isn't that awful? Despite all my hard work, he whined over the phone. I sighed heavily, understanding the gravity of the situation. Maybe your boss has a point. Perhaps he's concerned that your actions could jeopardize the bank's integrity in the long run, I replied calmly. My response seemed to strike a nerve. So, my hard work was all for nothing, huh? Well, whatever. Your opinion on my job doesn't matter to me anymore, he retorted before I hung up. It felt satisfying to finally express my feelings. Later, through an acquaintance, I learned that my ex-husband had been demoted and transferred to a distant branch as punishment for the turmoil he caused due to his affair. Additionally, Lily, witnessing my ex-husband's attempt to reconcile with me after learning about my lottery win, confronted him in a fury. She said to him, Actually, the baby isn't yours. Maybe I had other potential husbands, you know? I thought you were a high-flying banker, but I don't need a demoted, unstable one. I'll find someone better. Goodbye. With that, she left the bank and disappeared. Lily had entertained thoughts of remarrying my ex, believing he was an elite banker. However, upon realizing he was just an average employee with uncertain prospects, she changed her mind. It was a tale scarier than horror itself. My ex-husband was abandoned by his mistress, rejected by his wife and child, and his job was now on the line. It was a fitting consequence for his actions. With my lottery winnings, I moved into a condo with my daughter. While the money could have allowed me to stop working, I opted to stay financially responsible and soon return to my nursing career. It was important to me to save for my daughter's future and avoid unnecessary spending. However, I also wanted us to enjoy some luxury, so I planned a trip to Hawaii with my daughter and parents. Staying at a beautiful hotel and being able to treat my parents while creating lasting memories with my daughter was truly special. Looking forward, I'm eager to explore more places with my daughter, discover new interests together, and find hobbies we both enjoy. I'm excited about this new phase of life filled with happiness and adventures alongside my wonderful daughter. My happy marriage didn't last long. We were married for 2 years, and I still had strong feelings for my husband. I spent every day focusing on him, trying to stay attractive and take care of myself. But then I discovered that my husband was cheating on me. The woman he was seeing was very important to him. I decided I wanted a divorce. One afternoon, I thought my husband John was at work, but he unexpectedly came home with his lover. He had divorce papers with him. His lover, who had a blank expression, was there too. I guessed that this trip he was talking about was the honeymoon we never had. We only went on that trip because I got an unexpected bonus, and John suggested we go. We decided to go at the last minute, and I ended up paying for it. John told me that his ex-girlfriend and current lover contacted him during our honeymoon, and that's when he realized he still loved her. I was shocked and said, "What are you talking about? We were on our honeymoon. This doesn't make sense now." John replied, "I love her. She needs me too. We only just realized how we feel about each other. I do care about you, but she's the one I really love. You need to understand." I asked, "How am I supposed to understand? How does he expect me to just sign the divorce papers? What about my feelings?" John sighed and said, "You'll find someone better. You probably don't want to stay in this house anyway. We'll stay here, so you need to pack your things and move out in about a week." It felt like John wanted nothing to do with me anymore. He had asked me out and proposed to me, but now he was the one ending our marriage. He didn't take any responsibility for what happened, and I felt all my feelings for him vanish instantly without even an apology. I signed the divorce papers. John and his lover then left the house, telling me to be out by next week. I felt like my insides were freezing. It all happened so suddenly that I didn't even cry. Instead of feeling betrayed, I felt deceived, which made me feel sorry for myself and my situation. The next day, I asked a friend to help me pack up and move back to my parents' house. Since I'm a nurse and John didn't earn much, I paid most of our living expenses. Even though I was shocked by the affair and the divorce, not having to pay rent anymore felt like a small benefit in this situation. I made plans for where I would live next and started packing my things again to leave my parents' house. Kathy, John's ex, came to my mom's house. It was raining outside, so I let her in. My mom looked at me with sympathy. I wondered, what could my ex-husband want now? He said, I'm not the love of his life. I wondered if John was here to ask me to come back or if he wanted money. I felt bad for assuming, but given how much he spent and complained about money while we were married, it made sense to think that might be the reason. Maybe he left something behind. I decided to go to the living room to hear what he wanted. What do you want? My father asked angrily, but John remained calm as he replied, I'd like to talk to your daughter. It took a lot of nerve for him to stay so calm. What do you want? I'm busy, I said. When I opened the door, I was stunned to see John's lover, or rather his new wife, sitting next to him as if she had every right to be there. Why is she here? This is my parents' house. What are you thinking? I asked. No one should bring their new partner to the house where their ex grew up, and it felt incredibly insulting. Calm down, John says, and his attitude just makes me more disgusted. The woman with him remains silent again. Can't you just get this over with quickly? I asked, probably sounding more irritated than I intended. John looks serious. This is important. We haven't talked about dividing our things yet. I'm here to get my share. I think to myself, so it's money, just as I thought. John looks pleased. Yes, that's right. I had a feeling he would come soon, so I was prepared. I take out my purse and give him 30 cents. Here, this is your share. What? John and his new wife gape at the 3 dimes in his hand. What is this? He throws the coins on the floor. His new wife suddenly speaks up. Are you kidding? This isn't property. Stop messing around. They're both furious. That's all the savings we have left, I calmly explain. John must have expected more. He sneers at me and says, What are you talking about? There's more. I know you had $200,000. Give me my share of $100,000. He waves his hands around, and his wife nods along. I'm shocked and just stare at him. You're the one who wanted this over quickly. So if you want the money, hand it to me. John starts screaming and throwing things around the house. He's completely different from the man I knew. It's a relief to have left him. The loud noise and shouting bring my dad, who had left the room, and my brother, who had just come home, into the living room. My dad is stunned by John's outburst but manages to grab John's arms and restrain him, stopping him from causing more chaos. I quickly explain the situation to my brother, who is a lawyer and understands what's happening because he knows about the divorce. John's new wife overhears us and realizes that John has a lawyer in the family. Hey, I didn't know your ex-wife had a lawyer in the family, she yells at John, her eyes wide. I wonder why they're so focused on money. Even though I don't want to talk to John, I ask him, why do you need the money so badly? You left me because you said this woman is your dream. You chose to be with her instead of me, and that's why you wanted me to move out. Yes, that's true, John replies. But dividing the property is important. The house we have now was ours, and we want to build a new one. We're planning for a family, so we need a car and a vacation too. I want to do all the things a new husband should, which is why I'm here. It's hard for me though. Every reason he gives seems so selfish. Okay, I say. So you didn't want to come here. I don't want you here either. You don't seem to understand how terrible your actions were, so you don't seem sorry at all. I financially supported our marriage. Giving you my share is the least you can do to acknowledge what you've put me through. Supported you financially? John scoffs. What did he just say? Did he say I supported him? Maybe I heard wrong. John never wanted to work. He would come home as soon as he could to play online games and would take days off whenever he didn't feel like working. using up all his paid leave while pretending to be sick. John never intended to earn more money and took full advantage of the fact that I was a well-paid nurse. I covered all our living expenses. He would occasionally hand me $100 when he felt like it, but honestly, it felt like he was just an unemployed boyfriend living in my apartment without contributing. John never did any of the housework. Maybe if he had at least acknowledged my hard work, I could understand better, but I'm deeply disappointed by his unreasonable claim that I financially supported our marriage. I was the one paying all the living expenses. How can you say that? Based on what you just said, you should actually give me back the 30 cents I just gave you. What are you talking about? You really don't understand anything, do you? John's new wife interrupts. I'm sure you were excited when you heard about my savings, but I have some bad news for you, I say calmly, as John and his wife glare at me. At this point, my brother speaks up for me. Excuse me, I'm Henry Thompson, and I'm a lawyer. Let me clarify things for my sister. Only the savings made during the marriage are divided as property. Any money saved before the marriage remains the personal property of the individual. My sister saved up the $200,000 before the marriage, so it's her own money and can't be divided with you. The only amount left in your share account is 60 cents, so your share is half of that, which is 30 cents. There's no point in arguing about this. It seems my sister was saving for your future, but I believe you've spent it all on the woman sitting next to you. Henry speaks calmly, and John and his wife look shocked. John tries to respond. What my brother just said was as Catherine's brother, but now let me speak as her attorney. My client is requesting compensation from you. Why haven't you made this payment yet? I had requested compensation, I explain, but John only paid part of it. I was wondering why the rest wasn't paid, which is why I had my brother step in. My actual lawyer is his colleague, but since we didn't expect John to show up today, Henry is representing my lawyer. With Henry's intense gaze, John and his wife fall silent. You were asking for a share despite being the one who had the affair and caused the divorce. It doesn't make sense for you to ask for anything. It looks like you've already spent the money my sister had saved up for both of you. My sister's request is that you return the full amount you owe her and pay the compensation. That's impossible. John's new wife protests. Honey, let's stop this. We can't push this any further. John stands up and kicks the table while his wife tries to hold him back. When Henry mentions going to court, John seems to give up and starts speaking the truth. John admits, after the divorce, I lost my job, and since my wife is unemployed too, we started borrowing money. Now we're in so much debt that we can't pay the compensation. When we were trying to find a way to earn money, we remembered your savings and thought you might give us half if we talked about dividing the property. I'm stunned and speechless as they completely change their attitude and beg for my help. My brother, standing next to me, shakes his head to signal that I shouldn't listen to them. I have no sympathy for their situation and tell them they still need to pay back the compensation and my savings. I then ask my brother and father to show them out. The last few hours have felt like a storm. My mom returns to the room with a sigh of relief and starts cleaning up. My dad, furious, says what a terrible man John is and helps her. My brother rubs my back and says, You did nothing wrong. What you did today and the divorce were both right. You should be confident. He adds that we need to ensure they pay the compensation and immediately calls his colleague. All of us at the law firm are on your side, he says. I'm exhausted. I say, Mom, you did an amazing job. How about we all go out for steak tonight to lift our spirits? I collapse into my mom's arms and hug her. My dad and brother agree to the plan, so we have a wonderful dinner together that night. Later, with help from my brother, his colleague, and the law firm, I get back the compensation and my used savings. John and his wife have no luck with job interviews and end up working several part-time jobs. They won't be buying a house, a car, or going on vacation for a while. They seem to be finally grateful to me after experiencing their new life. When we pass each other on the street, they politely say hello, which makes me feel better knowing they've made at least a little progress. As for me, I'm in a steady relationship with the attorney who worked on my case. Henry is thrilled and says this man is perfect for me. 1 year after the divorce, I'm planning to introduce my new boyfriend to my parents soon. I'm sure they'll be very happy for me. I feel this way because when my ex-husband talked about his love of his life, I didn't really understand it. But now, I believe this new man might just be the love of my life.
My husband gave me divorce papers. His part was already filled out. If there's anything you don't like, feel free to give this out, okay? He smiled, a smile that seemed to say he couldn't possibly be wrong. Years later, I never would have imagined that the man I married, Tatum, after an office romance, would one day make me want to slap that smile off his face. I'm Sally, a working wife married for 3 years now. We don't have kids yet. Our marriage isn't great, but it's not terrible either. My husband isn't exactly controlling, but lately he's been lazy and doesn't contribute much. It's not unusual for both spouses to share chores, but my husband refuses to help out. He still insists that housework is women's work. Maybe it's because he lived with his parents for so long, but I think it's mostly because of his influence from his family, especially his mother. When you marry someone, the type of mother-in-law you end up with can really shape your married life. It's like a luck game, and whether you get lucky or not with your mother-in-law can make a big difference. My luck? Well, it's like getting the same disappointing prize every time. Sally, can't you make a decent meal? Another miss? Today my meeting ran late, and I got home late, so when I manage to leave on time, I do cook properly. What are you talking about? For a woman, taking care of the house is more important than work. It's common sense to have dinner ready when your husband gets home. I wish that kind of common sense had stayed in the 90s. Every day after work, my mother-in-law is somehow always there. My husband gave her a spare key without consulting me, so now she comes over every day. She's always there before I arrive, but I'm too afraid to ask how early she starts settling in. Then she spends her time finding faults around the house and bombards me with criticism and snide remarks as soon as I get home. Honestly, if Tatum keeps eating like this, it's going to ruin his health. That's why I cook when I can. Sigh, my poor son, stuck with such a disappointing wife. It's frustrating. She just brushes off everything I say, like she's not even listening, and calling him my poor boy is just weird. If it happened occasionally, it might be bearable, but her coming over every single day like this is incredibly stressful. What's worse is how my husband just laughs it off and doesn't intervene. And if she's going to come over every day, the least she could do is pitch in with something. But no, she's quick to criticize and make sarcastic remarks, that she never lifts a finger to help. Sometimes she even takes portions of the dinner I've prepared. I'm so tired. Well, I'll just take this takeaway then. Hold on, if you take that, we won't have anything for dinner. That's why I keep telling you to come home earlier and cook, but today, I couldn't. Stop making excuses. Just hurry up and cook for my dear son. I'm taking this. Oh, and I'll grab the strawberries from the fridge too. Bye now. Wait, you can't just take our dinner without asking. Even after our dinner was taken, my husband didn't say a word. I'm really getting annoyed, giving him an angry look, but he just keeps grinning foolishly. It's so frustrating. Why aren't you saying anything when our dinner was taken? It's no big deal, just a little bit. It's not just a little. They took the whole thing. Then hurry up. Huh? I'm really hungry. Hurry up and make dinner, will you? I was left speechless with anger and disbelief as my husband went to the living room and flopped down on the sofa. Ugh, this is so infuriating. At least pay for the takeout. I was seething with anger, screaming in my mind. I'm fed up with my mother-in-law showing up unannounced every day, but on the rare day she doesn't come, I feel uneasy. Why is that? When I got home from work, my mother-in-law was unusually absent. My husband, who should have been home before me, was also missing. Even though it should have been peaceful, I felt a sense of unease. The reason became clear the moment I opened the fridge. It was gone. The steak I had saved for a special occasion, bought on payday, was missing from the freezer where I had stored it. There was only one possible explanation. I hurried out of the house, jumped on my bike, and pedaled as fast as I could while still being cautious. My destination was my in-laws' house, just a 7-minute bike ride away. Finally arriving there, breathless from covering the distance in 5 minutes, I wasted no time. I pushed open the unlocked front door of their house and called out, but got no response. Yet I sensed someone inside. Knowing my mother-in-law often enters our home unannounced, I went in without hesitation. What I saw inside was shocking. There it was, my steak, the package emptied and the remains lying on the table. Seeing it almost completely eaten, I couldn't help but scream. My in-laws and, strangely, my husband looked at me in surprise. Sally, what are you doing here? Why did you barge in like this, Sally? Ignoring their questions, I grabbed the tray that had held the steak and glared at them. This is the steak I bought, right? Did you eat it without asking? Oh, that? It was delicious, thank you. My mother-in-law smiled cheerfully at me, while my face burned with anger. It's not about whether it was delicious. I bought that to share with my husband. Why did you eat it without asking? It's no big deal. Tatum had some too, but I didn't get to eat any. Hemph, serves you right for planning to eat it alone. Consider it a lesson for not buying enough for all of us. Learn from this. Why am I the one who has to learn a lesson? I looked at my husband, hoping for support, but he just grinned foolishly again. And you, why didn't you stop them? Well, I did get to have some, so it's okay if I didn't get more. There's no need to get so upset. We can just buy more. That's not the point. It's useless. Nothing I say seems to get through to my husband. Just then, tears started welling up in my eyes, and I felt a gentle hand on my shoulder. I looked up to see it was my father-in-law, always calm and quiet. I never understood what he was thinking, but I couldn't believe he joined in eating it. Or maybe he didn't know I had bought it. That's what I thought. Anyway. Sally, next time, get a bigger piece of meat so we can all enjoy it properly, my mother-in-law commented casually. That's not the issue here at all. Do they have no sense of apology? Their selfish actions drained me so much that I couldn't even find the energy to respond. I'm leaving. Don't you dare come barging in here again. My mother-in-law's voice rang out as I turned to leave. My husband stayed behind, mindlessly drinking beer. At that moment, I felt utterly indifferent. A few days later, I realized I needed to have a serious talk with my husband. The conversation took a surprising turn. What? I blurted out involuntarily. While I was out working, I unexpectedly saw my husband. Seeing him wasn't unusual. He's in sales after all. However, it was strange because he had told me he was on a business trip in another state. Why? What's going on? To make matters worse, he was walking arm in arm with a woman I didn't know. Judging by his foolish grin, it was clear they had more than just a casual relationship. I instinctively hid and listened as they approached, overhearing their conversation. Tatum, why are you looking at me like that? She asked. Because you're so cute, he replied in a pathetic, lovesick tone. Their conversation continued. Do you really want to marry me? She questioned. Yes, I want to marry you as soon as possible, he assured her. Then will you get a divorce? Of course, I'll talk to her about it tonight. Decision made, he affirmed. It was confirmed. He was cheating. In that moment, I felt no shock at all. Instead, I realized I had fallen completely out of love with him. There was no love left for him in my heart. It was all gone. I'm done, I thought, feeling indifferent. I knew what I had to do. First, I needed to find a moving company. After discovering my husband's affair, I promptly moved out. 3 months later, I was busy moving once again. The movers delivered my belongings, but I had to unpack everything myself. The full-service option was too costly. As I opened the first box, the doorbell rang. As expected, there they were, my husband and the two of them. Without a word, I unlocked the door and let them in. They rang the bell again upon reaching my door, so I silently opened it. Immediately they entered. Hey Sally, long time no see, my husband greeted me. Wow, this place is really nice, remarked my father-in-law. Sally, what were you thinking, running away and buying a condo without telling us? My mother-in-law exclaimed. Yes, I had finally fulfilled my dream of buying a condo. The apartment I shared with my husband was old and worn out, and I had always hoped to move somewhere better. When I found a newly built condo that matched my dreams, I didn't hesitate to make the purchase. So when I informed my husband, he showed up uninvited with my in-laws in tow. It was exactly what I had anticipated. The three of them barged in without hesitation, but I quickly stood in front of them to block their path. Stop right there. Only residents are allowed beyond this point. What? Sally, what's gotten into you? That's harsh. They're my parents. My husband looked shocked. Sorry, Tatum, but your parents are strangers to me. Sally, how can you say that? Isn't family more important than anything? Other things matter more than that. What a bad wife. Tatum, you should leave her. Relax, Mom. But yeah, divorce might be an option. I'll ask for this condo as part of it. It's kind of small though, isn't it? Ignoring me, my husband and his family looked around the inside of the condo near the entrance. It would have been better if you got a 2-family house, Sally. You really don't think about others. Exactly. She's completely thoughtless, don't you think? Yeah, I wanted my own room too, but that's tough with this place, isn't it? They kept talking, not noticing my disapproving look. Well, if we divorce, we can figure something out, right? Just as my mother-in-law reached for the doorknob leading to the living room, I gently pushed her hand away. It didn't hurt, but she looked at me shocked. Sally, how could you push my hand away like that? What's gotten into you? I'm just asking you to respect our privacy and not enter without permission. You're still strangers to me, I calmly explained, unafraid of her anger. My mother-in-law stared at me, wide-eyed. That's it, I've had enough. Fine, if that's how you feel, then we'll really become strangers. Tatum, divorce her immediately. My husband smirked oddly at his mother's sudden outburst, but I quickly spoke before he could respond. Don't worry, there's no need for that, I assured them. My husband looked bewildered. I don't know what you're misunderstanding, but I'm already single. What? How could you do that without telling me? My husband exclaimed in surprise. My mother-in-law joined in. Did you really do that? You can't just do whatever you want. Yeah, that's right. Filing for divorce without my consent is invalid. I'll take this to mediation, my father-in-law added, supporting my mother-in-law, but I had expected this. Oh, but Tatum was the one who prepared the divorce papers. Huh? What are you talking about? I have no idea. Oh, so you didn't prepare it? Remember when we first got married, you said, if there's something you don't like, feel free to bring it up without hesitation. Oh, yeah, now that you mention it. And that's when you finally remembered, right? My husband yelled, looking distressed. I never thought I'd actually need it, but I'm glad I kept it since there was something I didn't like. Why did you handle it yourself? Who does that seriously? It's not valid. Mediation, no divorce. Well, fine. Let's settle this thoroughly before we talk about divorce, okay? It seemed like everything had been anticipated. I pulled out documents and photos from a large envelope I had placed by the entrance. Inside were photos of my husband with his mistress and evidence of his affair. What's this? Evidence of your affair? My husband stammered. Did he? Well, you were the one who left home, so... No, the affair started long before that. I've heard a lot from this woman, your mistress, and I even have these photos. Huh? Is that true? After leaving home, I quickly consulted with a lawyer and hired a detective. They discovered that my husband and his mistress were meeting almost daily, making it relatively easy to gather evidence of their affair. With my lawyer beside me, I confronted the mistress. Tatum told me he's divorcing you and marrying me. I'm so happy he's finally leaving you. That dreamy girl gave me lots of photos of the good times she spent with you. No, that's not true. I expected a fierce battle with the mistress, but surprisingly, the conversation went smoothly due to her naivety. Tatum will take care of my compensation and handle the paperwork, so make sure it's done. Did you wait? I didn't agree to any of this. Well, I did ask her to wait quietly until the divorce is finalized. No wonder she kept avoiding me whenever I tried to contact her. I understand. The story has taken a new direction, and your explanation won't excuse your actions anymore. You're admitting you reached out to her first. That speaks volumes. Wait, listen. It's not what you think. It's not what it seems. There's no point in arguing. You have the right to contest the divorce papers, but the divorce will happen eventually. I'll also be seeking compensation and a fair division of assets. That's how it stands. Caught off guard by these unexpected developments, my husband collapsed to the floor, or rather my ex-husband now. Considering how useless he's been as a husband, I don't expect much in terms of savings, compensation, or property division. But honestly, I'm not counting on any of that anyway. My main goal is to divorce him and break away from both him and my in-laws. That's all I hope to achieve. I have a job and income, so I'll manage. I still have savings after buying the condo. I'm not worried about my future. If I can just stand up for myself against my husband, that's enough for me. With these thoughts in mind, I looked down at my stunned husband. However, it was my mother-in-law who couldn't hold back. Wait a minute, Sally. What are you talking about? Your son cheated without our knowledge, didn't he? Well, even though our son cheated, it must have been your fault too, right? It's the wife's fault for getting cheated on. Oh, is that so? Well then, could you please leave now? This is exactly what I expected. I didn't think we'd have a reasonable conversation anyway. No matter what she says, she's just a stranger now, completely unknown to me. I decisively began to usher her out, but my mother-in-law resisted strongly against my efforts. Even if you're getting divorced, you need to hand over this condo for the property division. Why should I do that? We bought this with marital funds, right? Our son has a share too. They probably don't understand the whole situation, my mother-in-law said with a smug look. Well, if we had bought this condo with savings from our marriage, then that would be true. But unfortunately for her, that's not the case. I purchased this condo with money I had before we got married, so it's not marital property to divide. Really? Yes, that's right. Both my parents passed away shortly after I started working. That's why I had planned to care for my in-laws after marriage. But facing my mother-in-law's constant attacks and snide remarks every day shattered that resolve completely. Tatum never contributed financially to the household. Looking back now, was he spending it on his affair? Well, it doesn't matter. I've been covering almost all our living expenses, so there are no savings from our marriage. But compensation is different. Even if it's paid in installments, please ensure your son pays it promptly. I can't believe this, Sally-san. Can't you reconsider the divorce? I'll talk sternly to my son about it. Why should I? There's no benefit for me in that. But I promise to stop criticizing from now on. Well, it's too late for that now. But how about this? Let's have steak tonight. We'll treat ourselves to some high-quality meat. Do you have money for that? Well, do you have it? If you lend it to me, I'll go buy it. No way, there's no benefit for me. With a deep sigh, I calmly addressed the three pale-faced individuals. Please leave. Wait a moment, let's talk. Please leave. Just buy the meat and go, I shouted with determination, and in that instant, they all jumped up and hurriedly left. Ah, that's a relief. Afterward, my ex-husband accepted the divorce without further resistance. Mentioning a lump sum compensation payment if he didn't agree seemed to make him realize the seriousness of the situation. His mistress was furious upon learning he wouldn't cover her share of the compensation. Well, my ex-husband felt comfortable because I was covering our living expenses, but his salary wasn't high to begin with. In fact, it was even lower than mine. Someone like him couldn't afford to pay compensation, even to his mistress. Even so, since she signed the documents, I'll make sure to collect the compensation I'm owed firmly and promptly. I was worried my ex-MIL might return, knowing the condo's location, but thankfully that concern was unnecessary. It seems she aged rapidly and lost energy due to the shock. My son, struggling on a pension, came back home in tears because he couldn't afford rent either. Surrounded by two unreliable men, my ex-FIL and ex-husband, and struggling in a tough financial situation, it seems my ex-MIL doesn't have the energy to come to my house. I heard this from my ex-husband, who pleaded with me to wait for the compensation payment. Now that I've started fresh as a single person, I'm enjoying carefree days of independence at home. There's no one making snide remarks, and no one eating my groceries without permission. I'm really enjoying living alone. Maybe I'll try some local specialties next time. Freedom is truly nice, I whispered to myself. Oh, it feels so good. Freedom, I exclaimed. It feels great. Should I open another beer? It was a calm evening at home until the phone rang and changed everything. Marcus and I were having dinner, salmon and roasted potatoes I cooked, when his phone started buzzing. He looked at the screen and froze. Who's calling? I asked. It's Selena, he said with a serious look. Selena, his 19-year-old daughter from his troubled first marriage, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. My heart sank. This couldn't be good. Marcus answered the call, and I watched his face closely as he listened, his expression showing worry. After a short conversation, he hung up and let out a deep sigh. What did she want? I asked, preparing myself. She's coming to live with us. Her roommate kicked her out, so she's driving here tomorrow. I dropped my fork, suddenly losing my appetite. Here? How long? She didn't say, but it seems like she's planning to stay for a while, Marcus replied. Panic gripped me. We had worked so hard to create a stable life together. Both of us came from broken families filled with lies and betrayals. It took years of therapy and trust building to heal those wounds. The last thing we needed was a troubled 19-year-old causing more chaos. Can't her mom take her? I suggested. Marcus shook his head. You know how bad things are between them since the divorce. Before I could protest further, we heard the front door open. Our 16-year-old son, Eli, came in from basketball practice, his sweaty hair damp. Hey, Mom, Dad, what's going on? He asked, sensing the tension in the room. Marcus managed a weary smile. We just heard from your sister Selena. She's going to be staying with us for a while. Eli looked surprised. He knew little about Selena beyond the few difficult stories Marcus had shared over the years. Okay, Eli said cautiously. How long is she going to be here? We're not sure yet, Marcus admitted. A tense silence settled over the room, and I could sense the worry spinning through Ellie's mind. Selena's sudden arrival threatened the stability he cherished, but he was too compassionate to voice his concerns. I reached out and squeezed his hand reassuringly before turning to Marcus with determination. We need to establish clear rules, I insisted. No taking advantage or expecting a free ride. If she stays here, she has to find a job and contribute. Marcus agreed. You're right. I'll make sure she understands that when she gets here. As we tidied up after dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that Selena's return wouldn't bring anything positive. The past has a way of resurfacing, no matter how tightly you try to seal it away. The next morning, I woke with a sense of unease. Today was the day Selena would arrive. Marcus had prepared the small guest room for her, though I doubted she'd be pleased with the cramped space. During breakfast, Marcus attempted to reassure Eli. Don't worry, I'm sure Selena has matured a lot since I last saw her. Let's try to make her feel welcome. Eli nodded, but his apprehension was clear. Around noon, the sound of a car pulling up outside caught our attention. That must be her, Marcus announced. My heart raced as we approached the front door. A blonde girl emerged from a worn-out hatchback packed with clothes and boxes. She looked nothing like the withdrawn, skinny 13-year-old I remembered from years ago during the divorce hearings. She had grown tall and attractive, dressed in trendy clothes with skillfully applied makeup. However, her bright smile didn't seem to reach her eyes. Marcus greeted her with an awkward hug. Welcome home, Selena. Thanks, Daddy, she replied sweetly, though she hadn't made an effort to stay in touch since the divorce. It's great to see you again. Over the next hour, Selena brought in her belongings, stacking them in the small guest room. Despite the limited space, she refused Marcus's offers to help, sharply instructing him not to touch her things. So much for her growing up, I thought to myself. During dinner, Selena dominated the conversation, talking mostly about herself and subtly making jabs at me. I can't believe you're still working as a nurse, Lena. Wouldn't you rather do something more interesting? I held back my response. Nursing was my passion, but Selena clearly didn't respect it. When Eli shared his plans to apply for college scholarships, Selena scoffed. Good luck getting enough money to go to a decent school. Eli looked hurt. I knew how much effort he had put into maintaining his straight A's and excelling in sports. After dinner, I pulled Marcus aside. We need to establish some rules for Selena, I insisted. We can't tolerate this entitled behavior. He sighed. You're right. I'll talk to her. But in the following days, nothing changed. Selena continued to behave disrespectfully, refusing to find a job or help with anything around the house. My patience wore thin. Then came the breaking point. One evening after work, I returned home to find Selena gone and Eli sitting alone, looking pale. What's wrong? I asked him. My heart sank as Eli revealed what had happened. Selena had stolen his laptop and emptied his money jar, which held over $500 he had saved from his job. Eli looked devastated. Anger surged through me. That money represented years of Eli's hard work and dedication. When Selena finally returned, I confronted her. Give back Eli's money and his laptop right now, I demanded. She smirked dismissively. Or what? You'll kick me out. I wanted to react impulsively, but I knew violence wouldn't solve anything. Selena's toxic behavior was tearing apart our family, and I knew I had to protect us, even if it meant making a difficult decision about Marcus's daughter. Right then, I resolved that Selena had to leave. When Marcus arrived home, I wasted no time in telling him what Selena had done. She stole from her own brother after we welcomed her into our home. I want her out, Marcus. Today, I insisted firmly. Marcus looked torn. I know Selena's actions are unacceptable, but she's still my daughter. If we kick her out now, she'll have nowhere to go. So we just let her keep taking advantage of us, I exclaimed. She's manipulating you, Marcus. Can't you see that? Please give me a little more time to talk to her, Marcus pleaded. I believe with some clear boundaries, Selena can change. I sighed in frustration. Marcus's paternal instincts were clouding his judgment about Selena's behavior, but I knew I had to handle this delicately to avoid straining our marriage. Okay, I relented. 1 week. If Selena's behavior doesn't show significant improvement by then, she has to leave. Marcus reluctantly agreed to give Selena more time, hoping against hope that she would change. But my hopes were quickly dashed as Selena's behavior spiraled out of control over the next few days. She stayed out all night partying, slept until noon, and even helped herself to my jewelry, dismissing my demands for her to find a job with arrogant remarks about living rent-free. Things reached a breaking point one evening when I found her smoking on the couch. When I confronted her, she brazenly blew smoke in my face and defied me, claiming I had no authority over her. I felt sickened by Selena's manipulative behavior. She knew exactly how to push my buttons while putting on a sweet act for Marcus. But the final straw came when I received a call from my credit card company about a suspicious $2,000 charge at a luxury store in Leh. It was clear Selena had used my card without permission, racking up more debt in a week than Eli and I spent on groceries in a month. When Marcus returned home, I couldn't contain my rage any longer. Your daughter is tearing us apart. I want her out of this house tonight, I demanded, trembling with anger. Marcus looked worn down. You're right. I wanted to believe Selena could change, but she's completely out of control. It's either her or me, Marcus, I stated firmly. Choose carefully. He pulled me into a comforting hug. You and Eli will always come first. I just hope we can get through this without tearing our family apart. We gathered with Selena, and Marcus firmly told her she had to leave immediately. She exploded in anger, hurling insults and accusations. I remained quiet, letting Marcus handle his distraught daughter. When Selena stormed off to pack, Marcus slumped in defeat. I'm so sorry I brought this chaos into our home, he lamented. You and Eli mean everything to me. No matter how long it takes, we'll heal from Selena's influence. I squeezed his hand, finding solace in his resolve. With unity, we would overcome this trial. Selena's destructive behavior wouldn't break our family. The weeks following Selena's departure were tense. Marcus attempted to reach out to her multiple times, but she refused to respond. I knew he wrestled with guilt, blaming himself for her actions. I reassured him we had made the right decision. Selena had wreaked havoc like a tornado. We changed the locks and dealt with the fallout from my stolen credit card, thankfully resolved with the bank's support in reversing the fraudulent charges. Gradually, our lives returned to normalcy. My heart sank as I opened the letter, shattering the fragile peace we had started to rebuild. It was from a bank I didn't recognize, thanking me for opening a new credit account. Panic set in as I read through the attached paperwork. Someone had fraudulently applied for a $155,000 personal loan in my name, forging my signature, money that had already been deposited into an unknown account. The implications were staggering. This amount of debt could devastate our family, and there was only one person I suspected could do such a thing. When Marcus returned home, I thrust the letter into his hands. "Your daughter is trying to ruin us. We need to call the police right away." His eyes widened in shock as he scanned the letter. My God, I knew Selena had issues, but identity theft? He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. This is all my fault. I failed her as a father. My anger towards Selena began to soften as I saw how deeply Marcus was affected by her betrayal. Sitting beside him, I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did everything you could for her in such difficult circumstances. Some people just refuse to change. Now we have to focus on protecting ourselves and Eli. Will you call the police to report the fraud?" Marcus sighed heavily but nodded. "You're right. I need to do the responsible thing, no matter how painful." We spent an agonizing hour on the phone with the police and the bank, filing reports about Selena's crime. It was surreal to think that the sweet girl I had seen in Marcus's wedding photos could turn into such a heartless criminal. The bank investigator informed us that the loan had been taken out locally, suggesting Selena was still nearby. The thought sent chills down my spine. That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Marcus. "We'll work with the bank to invalidate that loan. They believe we're the victims in this." "I hope you're right," Marcus murmured, his voice heavy with worry, "because if not, this could ruin us financially. We might even lose the house." The unspoken fear hung thick between us. Selena wasn't satisfied with just tarnishing her father's trust. She seemed determined to dismantle our entire family, no matter the cost. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I repeated a silent mantra. Selena's schemes couldn't touch us, no matter how hard she tried. Goodness and truth would prevail, but beneath the surface a cold anger simmered. If Selena continued to threaten my loved ones, I was prepared to do whatever it took to stop her. In the following weeks there was no word from Selena. The bank's investigation into the fraudulent loan bought us some time before any debts were due. Police attempts to locate her proved fruitless. Selena had vanished without a trace, leaving Marcus to comb through online records in a desperate search for clues. It was clear she knew how to evade capture, an adept manipulator and elusive figure. Then on a sunny Saturday, our world shifted once more. Marcus was away at a teaching conference for the weekend, so Eli and I decided to catch a movie together. But upon returning home, a sense of dread washed over me immediately. The front door stood open. Heart pounding, I hurried inside, Eli right beside me. "Wait in the hall," I instructed Eli firmly. If Selena was inside, I wanted to shield him from any danger. Moving cautiously, I entered the dimly lit rooms. At first glance, nothing appeared out of place. Then I reached Ellie's bedroom. The sight was devastating. Drawers thrown open, mattress overturned, and the closet in disarray. Eli rushed in beside me, gasping in disbelief. That's when I noticed the paper on his bed, scrawled with a mocking message. "College fund gone. Oops, better start bussing tables, loser brother." Anger surged through me, blurring my vision. The college fund Marcus and I had painstakingly saved for Ellie's future, nearly $20,000, was stolen. Selena had callously used it for her own needs while leaving hurtful insults for her brother, whom she had never bothered to know. I heard a choked sob from Eli, his face drained of color, tears welling in his eyes. "All the money you saved up for me, gone." I hugged my kind, hard-working son, feeling heartbroken for him. "We'll find a way through this," I promised, but inside, I was furious. That money was meant to help Eli have a better life, but Selena had taken it all away without any care. When Marcus came home, he was devastated by the break-in and Ellie's loss. My usually calm husband was furious, just like me. Our savings were gone, our home broken into, and our son hurt for no reason. It was too much. Selena needed to face consequences before she hurt more innocent people. The next evening, ignoring Marcus's warnings, I drove to the old motel where people said Selena was staying. I found her beat-up car parked outside. I knocked on her door until she opened it, smirking when she saw me. "Well, if it isn't Saint Lena, here to lecture me about morals." I slapped her hard across the face. "You're a terrible person," I said angrily. "Didn't ruining our lives once satisfy you?" Selena's smirk disappeared. "You'll pay for that," she snapped, trying to attack me. We struggled briefly before I pushed her back inside and slammed the door in her angry face. I walked away, shaking but determined. Today, Selena's reign of terror ended one way or another. I had given her chances to change, but some people are rotten to the core beyond redemption. Trying to save them risks dragging yourself down too. Selena had shown herself to be heartless and incapable of doing any good. Now it was time to cut her out of our lives for good before she could hurt us again. In the weeks that followed, I nervously waited for Selena's revenge. Marcus tightened security around our house. I kept Eli home from school, afraid to leave him alone until Selena was caught. But as time went on without any sign of her, we started to relax. Maybe she had realized she couldn't stay in town without facing consequences for what she'd done. Late one night, I woke up to blaring fire alarms. Marcus and I rushed to Ellie's room and found it filled with smoke, flames climbing up one wall. We grabbed Eli and hurried outside just before the fire consumed his bedroom. While firefighters put out the blaze, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was no accident. Selena had made a final desperate move for revenge. The police investigation confirmed my suspicions. Traces of gasoline had been found on one side of the house, deliberately set alight. It was a chilling realization that Selena had intended to destroy us as we slept, if not for our timely awakening. Marcus looked exhausted as he spoke to the investigators. Our daughter, Selena Rogers, is your prime suspect for arson. She's already committed identity theft and burglary against us. This fire was her latest attempt to harm my family. After discovering Selena was committing more serious crimes, the police finally took action. They got security camera footage showing someone in Selena's car leaving the area just before firefighters arrived. Arrest warrants were issued for Selena, and her name and photo were shown in the news as a dangerous criminal. Marcus even asked Selena to surrender, promising she'd get a fair trial. But Selena stayed hidden, leaving us stuck in uncertainty, fearing she might strike again. I stayed indoors with Eli, keeping a rifle and fire extinguishers close by. She had already taken so much from us, I wouldn't let her take our peace of mind too. Then one evening I got a surprise call from the detective leading the case, urgently telling me, "You need to check the news now. They just caught Selena Rogers." I rushed Marcus and Eli to the TV, our hands shaking. The news showed Selena in handcuffs outside a pawn shop, stolen things from our house scattered around her, jewelry and electronics. She cursed and spat at reporters while police put her in a car. Selena had thought she couldn't be caught, but she slipped up and got caught red-handed. Reporters talked about Selena's shocking crimes against her own family. Her reputation was ruined, and everyone saw the real monster behind her pretty face. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. That night, with Selena locked up and our home safe, we finally slept peacefully. The coming weeks would be hard, cleaning up the mess Selena made, but the worst was over. Her lies couldn't hurt us anymore. A new day had come, full of hope and promise. In the weeks after Selena was arrested, life slowly returned to normal. With Selena facing serious charges in jail, the heaviness that had burdened our home began to lift. I took Eli out to celebrate his birthday at his favorite restaurants, and Marcus and I spent evenings reminiscing about happier times before Selena came into our lives. We started making plans to repair the fire damage and recover financially. But looming court dates brought anxiety. Marcus struggled with the thought of testifying against his own daughter, despite their strained relationship. I tried to stay strong, reminding myself of the pain Selena had caused us. Then came shocking news. Selena had been involved in a violent fight with another inmate in jail and had died as a result. Marcus was devastated. He withdrew into our room for days, grappling with guilt. Meanwhile, I focused on supporting Eli, who, despite everything, felt saddened by the loss of a sister he barely knew. In the following weeks, we learned disturbing details about Selena's final days. The inmate she fought with claimed Selena had boasted about how she enjoyed deceiving people and wished she had stolen even more from us. Hearing Selena's callous words only hardened my resolve. She had shown no remorse for the pain she caused. In the end, her own greed and aggression had led to her downfall. With Selena no longer around, her case quickly fell apart. The bank canceled her fake loan applications, lifting that heavy debt off our shoulders. The police recovered some of our stolen money from her places. Meanwhile, our community rallied behind us once Selena's crimes came to light, offering sympathy and raising funds to help Eli with his college tuition. Their kindness overwhelmed me. After being trapped in Selena's lies and isolation, the support of true friends felt like escaping a nightmare. Marcus felt it too. We weren't alone. Good people could stand against evil together. On the anniversary of Selena's passing, we visited her grave for the first and only time. Marcus knelt beside her simple gravestone, quietly saying a prayer. I stood with Eli, giving them space. "She wasn't always like this," Eli said softly. "Do you think if she had made different choices, she could have found happiness?" I held my wise son close, embracing his insight. Everyone chooses their own path. Selena's led to destruction, but we're moving forward now, into the light. Marcus joined us, his demeanor finally calm. He took my hand with a gentle smile. "Thank you for staying by my side," he said. "Your love guided me through the darkness." Together, we walked away from Selena's troubled legacy toward a future full of promise. In the months following Selena's passing, our family began to heal. We repaired the fire damage, recovered stolen money, and settled debts. Slowly, we reclaimed what Selena had tried to take from us. Yet some wounds ran deeper. I woke from nightmares of fire consuming our home. Marcus withdrew into solitude, wrestling with guilt, while Eli grew more reserved, startled by every sound and keeping his door locked. That's when I suggested we start seeing a family counselor. Initially, Marcus hesitated, feeling ashamed about needing help. But eventually, he agreed that it was essential for us to heal fully. Our counseling sessions became a source of profound release. We discussed feelings of betrayal, violation, and anger. The counselor taught us techniques to manage anxiety and PTSD, encouraging us to express our emotions rather than keeping them inside, which had strained my relationship with Marcus, who tended to brood. Through these sessions, I discovered depths of pain in Marcus that I had not fully understood before. He confessed that part of his desperate attempts to help Selena stemmed from regret over his perceived failures as a father during his divorce. The counselor helped him see that his intentions were misguided rather than malicious, easing his sense of shame. For Ale, the most comfort came from returning to normal routines. He rejoined school sports teams, volunteered at a homeless shelter, and started working part-time at an ice cream parlor. Focusing on these activities and engaging with the community helped him feel more empowered and less helpless. 6 months later, with our counselor's blessing, we decided to put our troubles with Selena behind us. Using the last of the recovered money, we took a family trip to Hawaii. We enjoyed stunning beaches and delicious dinners, free from tension or drama, just cherishing our time together. On our last night, Marcus and I renewed our vows on the beach at sunset, with Eli proudly officiating. Looking at my two incredible men, my heart swelled with love and pride. Selena had tried to tear us apart, but instead, we emerged stronger. While scars remain, we wear them proudly, refusing to let past pain define us. Our family embodies resilience. During the flight home, I wrote a journal entry reflecting on our journey, which I later shared with Marcus and Eli. The past year brought immense challenges but also profound growth. We've grown closer, our wounds turning into wisdom. Selena's actions reopened old wounds and inflicted new ones, but we've stitched ourselves together, becoming stronger. Our imperfect family doesn't just survive, we thrive. Darkness fades, healing begins, and the enduring light remains. Later that week, I stored my journal in a keepsake box. The last remnants of Selena's havoc, court documents, financial statements, police reports, were discarded. Marcus held me close, saying, "It's finally over. Now we can build something beautiful from the ashes." I smiled at him and embraced Eli. The storm had passed. Ahead of us stretched a bright future, and together we would walk forward, facing the light. "Since you can't even do chores properly, you might as well just keep working, huh?" Those words really annoyed me. Thomas used to oppose me working. He was jealous when I became a supervisor, asked me for money when I got a raise, and now he wants me to work nonstop. It's frustrating how selfish he can be. "What's wrong? Got a problem? If you do, then do whatever you want," Thomas replied, seeing I was upset, with a look that said, "Fine, I'll do whatever I want to." I couldn't keep quiet, so I snapped back and went to bed annoyed. I was so angry at Thomas, but work doesn't stop for anyone. The next day, as soon as I got to the office, I asked for a meeting with the boss. Just like I told Thomas, I decided to do what I wanted and took on a certain task that had been suggested earlier. "My name's Anna. I'm 30 years old and I married Thomas, who's also 30, about 3 years ago. We haven't had children yet, so we're both working hard and earning money. In the past, people used to expect women to stay home after marriage, but things are different now. Even though we work at different companies, we both have full-time jobs and share the household tasks. Thomas usually handles laundry and cleaning, while I focus on cooking meals. Since we got married, I've been trying to cook delicious meals that Thomas enjoys. At work, I work hard to match the performance of my male colleagues, and recently I was promoted to supervisor. Being a supervisor means I have more work to do, both in quantity and quality. However, Thomas, despite being a coworker, didn't try to understand my situation. One evening at dinner, Thomas said, "Didn't we have this for dinner yesterday? Your cooking seems a bit careless these days. Please put more effort into it." Thomas is still in a lower position, not a supervisor like me. Maybe he felt jealous that I got promoted before him. Instead of being happy for me, he started complaining every day. Even though I have less free time now, I still make sure to do my part in household chores, I thought, understanding that Thomas's complaints were rooted in jealousy, so I had to remain patient. I do my best to prepare in the mornings, but sometimes dinner ends up being late when I get home, so I've been making side dishes ahead of time. Side dishes again. So you're saying dinner is the same every day? That's not what I meant. Please don't misunderstand. You're the one who said you take care of meals when we got married, right? The women at my company handle their households well, even while raising kids. I always mention that. I couldn't respond. Maybe there are such women at Thomas's workplace, but comparing ourselves to others doesn't help. Besides, the women Thomas talks about actually work part-time. It's not that I think less of part-time work, but being compared like that doesn't sit right with me. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Well, I'll forgive you this time, 'cause I'm kind, Thomas replied, starting to eat again once I apologized. I wish he'd just eat without commenting if he's going to eat anyway, but there's nothing I can do about it. When I talk about Thomas to my friends, they say it's good practice for dealing with kids. Indeed, even though we don't have children, dealing with Thomas sometimes feels like dealing with a child. I have to handle him with patience. Oh, by the way, you did the laundry, right? Thanks for that. Huh? Oh yeah, of course that was the agreement, you know. Without me the house wouldn't function, huh? I held back what I wanted to say and praised Thomas. He seemed pleased with that. Indeed, Thomas does his part of the household chores as we agreed. But when it comes to laundry, he doesn't check the care labels or use a laundry bag. He just throws everything in and presses one button for wash and dry. So sometimes Thomas complains about clothes shrinking or getting worn out. If that's what counts as doing chores properly, I wonder how well I'm actually managing. But I never expressed my dissatisfaction. The one time I did, it led to a big fight. Why didn't you quit your job and do everything yourself? That's what I said when we got married. I shouldn't have listened to anything you said, just like Betty told me. Thomas yelled angrily and insulted me, then stopped talking to me for about 2 weeks. Of course, during that time, he didn't do his share of the work, leaving me to handle everything on my own. I find it easier to endure some challenges than to feel completely drained, both mentally and physically. Indeed, as Thomas mentioned during our argument, he wasn't initially supportive of me working. Betty said there's nothing good about a married woman working outside. That's why I want you to stay at home, he told me. I don't know why Thomas's sister feels that way, but I was willing to go along with it if that's what Thomas preferred. However, it soon became clear that we couldn't manage on just Thomas's salary alone. We couldn't rely solely on ideals, we needed practical solutions, so I pleaded desperately with him to let me continue working. My company is reputable and pays well. If we both worked, we could have some financial flexibility. Reluctantly, Thomas agreed to my heartfelt plea, which led us to where we are now. Despite everything, whether reluctantly or not, Thomas did share in the household chores. It's true that even that much help was appreciated. As Thomas's birthday approached, we hadn't done anything lavish to celebrate since we got married. Normally, we would mark the occasion at home with my cooking. But this year, with my recent promotion and salary increase, I decided to treat him to a dinner at a hotel. On the day itself, after buying him a gift, Thomas was pleasantly surprised and thoroughly enjoyed the steak dinner. "This is the best meal I've ever had, but are you sure we can afford this?" he asked. "It's your special day. I got a raise since becoming a supervisor and will budget more carefully from now on. No need to worry about the side dishes, all right?" We shared a joke and ended the day that way. Yet, I didn't notice the smug smile on Thomas's face at that moment. A few days later, Thomas asked, "Hey, you mentioned your salary went up, right? How much of a raise did you get as a supervisor?" He kept bringing it up after his birthday. Supervisor seemed like a touchy subject we both avoided, but as soon as he heard about the raise, his attitude changed quickly. "Being a supervisor is great. You've worked hard for it." He started praising me like that. At first, I was surprised by his sudden shift and just gave a small smile to downplay it. But he kept pressing about the salary. I continued to dodge the topic, but when I kept avoiding him, he sulked. "What's wrong? Feeling superior now that you're a supervisor? Maybe you look down on me, just an employee at a small company. It was just a treat for your birthday. We're not wealthy, so let's not keep talking about money." I finally snapped, and that stopped his persistence. But it was clear Thomas was fixated on my income. If I had known it would lead to this, maybe I wouldn't have become a supervisor or celebrated his birthday. There was some regret, but it wasn't all bad. Since becoming a supervisor, I've been given an important project. Even though it means more work, Thomas has been supportive. "You're a supervisor and busy with work. I'll do what I can," he said, even preparing dinner, even if it was just frozen meals. Despite his focus on money, his effort made that birthday special, perhaps. Later, when the project settled down, Thomas asked eagerly, "So you've been busy, you must be getting a special bonus, right?" I was taken aback by his question. "No, why would there be a bonus?" I replied wearily, surprised. Then Thomas erupted. "Months of overtime, and no bonus. What was the point of me helping then? What a lousy company." I didn't have the energy to argue back. Is there supposed to be a deeper meaning behind a couple's cooperation? The idea of him criticizing someone's company was hard to believe. That was the moment I couldn't hold back anymore. "What I meant was, I appreciated your help, but is this what you really think?" I responded, and Thomas fired back. This led to a heated argument. Enough, let's stop. I'm tired and going to sleep, I said, ending the conversation abruptly. After that, I couldn't bear to look at Thomas for a while. Sometime later, I had to go on a business trip. We hadn't spoken since the argument, but I needed to inform him since I would be away. I'll be gone for 2 nights and 3 days on a business trip. Please take care while I'm away, I told him. However, perhaps still upset, Thomas didn't respond. Without resolving things, I left for my trip. Busy with work for 3 days, I found myself wondering about Thomas during my breaks. Was he eating well? I worried, but my pride stopped me from reaching out. Being apart helped me calm down, and I planned to apologize upon my return. When I returned after 3 days of work, I brought back some tasty souvenirs and headed home. I'm back, I announced upon entering, but something felt strange right away. There were many unfamiliar pairs of shoes by the door, and the scent of cooking filled the air, not the usual frozen meals, but the unmistakable aroma of home-cooked food. Thomas can't cook, I thought, rushing into the living room. Oh, Anna, welcome back, Betty greeted me. What are you doing here? I asked, surprised to see Thomas's sister, Betty, in our kitchen. As I glanced around, I noticed Thomas's niece, Lisa, lounging on the couch as if she belonged there. It didn't seem like a casual visit, it looked like they had moved in. Even the couch seemed new, not the one we had before my trip. I stood at the living room entrance, completely bewildered by the scene unfolding before me. Dinner will be ready soon, Betty said casually, while I continued to stare at her in disbelief. I walked over to Thomas, sitting in a chair in the living room, and asked him, "What's happening, Thomas?" "It's a big decision to live with Betty and Lisa now. The move is already done," Thomas said casually, acting like it was the most natural thing. "That's what's happening, so let's all get along," Betty added with a smile. But I couldn't find it in me to smile back. Moving their stuff in without asking, deciding to live together without discussing it first. "Hold on, you can't just decide this on your own," I protested. "What's the issue? You're always too busy with overtime to handle housework anyway. It's easier if we live together and Betty takes care of things," Thomas retorted to my objections. Betty had Lisa when she was 20 and got divorced a few years later. Since then, she's been a single mother raising Lisa, who is now 18, all on her own. I knew this, and I knew Thomas cared deeply for his older sister, Betty, but I never expected it would lead to us living together. "Come on, Anna," Betty said confidently. "Nice to meet you," Lisa murmured quietly. My head was throbbing, but I couldn't accept the situation silently. "I'm sorry, but I can't live with all of you," I said firmly. However, Thomas laughed at me as if it were a joke. "Why not? Since you can't even handle housework properly, you might as well keep working, right?" His words irritated me. It was Thomas who initially opposed me working, jealous of my promotion, then relied on my salary increase, and now he was telling me to keep working. It was unbelievable and selfish. "What's the matter? Got a complaint?" "If you do, then do whatever you want," Thomas retorted with a frown, sensing my irritation. "Fine, I'll do whatever I want then." But I was the one who wanted to be angry. I couldn't keep quiet, so I told Thomas how I felt. After that, we didn't speak, and I went to bed. Betty and Lisa apparently decided to give up their own place and moved into our home, bringing their bed with them. They turned the room that was supposed to be for our future children into their room without asking me. I felt more sadness than anger. But work couldn't wait. The next day, as soon as I arrived, I asked for a meeting with the director. I decided to take on a task that HR had proposed earlier. "That's wonderful. I appreciate you taking it on. It's a great opportunity, so I'll give it my all," I promised the director, fully engrossed in my work. I found it more comforting to be at the office than at home. Unable to forgive Thomas, a few days later he messaged me, "Hey Anna, how long are you going to keep sulking? Just come back already." I had been going home, but only when everyone was asleep, leaving before anyone woke up. However, for the past few days, I hadn't even returned home because I found a new place to live. "Come back. You can't just do that," he replied, laughing. "I can't come back right away," I said. "Why not?" "I'm in Italy right now. It's the middle of the night here. And Betty's there to take care of the house, right?" "Huh?" Thomas paused, surprised by my tired response. It was night for him, but already the middle of the night where I was. Dealing with this conversation with Thomas after work was just training. Finally understanding, Thomas suddenly raised his voice. "What? Italy? You went on a trip without telling us?" "It's not a trip. I've been living here for the past 3 days. What are you talking about?" But my response seemed to confuse Thomas again. "Again? Didn't you say I could do whatever I wanted?" I could almost picture him stunned on the other end of the phone. "What I meant is, you told me to do whatever I wanted, and I did. So I accepted the assignment in Italy that was offered to me earlier. They've set up a condo for me, and it's a beautiful place," I explained. "There's a limit to doing whatever you want. This affects our life together, and you decided on your own, Thomas sounded upset. Surely if we had talked about it, we might have decided to move here together. But this assignment in Italy was like a reward for my hard work. Thomas was the one who got upset about the bonus and didn't listen to other things. Yet didn't it feel strange for him to say he decided on his own to live with Betty and Lisa? His own words were coming back to him. Did you even discuss anything with me that affects our life together? I questioned. Well, I'll be working here and I'll return to the States as a manager in 2 years. Until then, enjoy life with Betty and her family, I concluded before hanging up. Thomas must be feeling uneasy now, his own actions and words preventing him from living abroad. A few days later, Thomas contacted me, wondering what it was about. I answered, and he sounded cheerful. Guess where I am? I don't care. I'm working. I'm hanging up, I replied dismissively. Believe it or not, I'm in front of your condo, he said. Huh? I was surprised by his words. He had called my work to get my address, claiming it was necessary for some procedures, and using that address, he had come over on his own. What about your work? I asked. I took some time off and yep, I'm here too, said Betty's voice over the phone. Why she had come too was beyond me. I was exasperated. So we're both waiting out here. Hurry home, said Thomas. Both? What about Lisa? Lisa has a test, so she couldn't come, Betty said casually, leaving me astonished once again. Is that so? But I won't be returning today. I have a dinner meeting far away, I replied. Even if they had contacted me earlier, I wasn't in the mood to entertain them on such short notice. I had a social gathering with another company and had no plans to go home. Huh? What should we do? Thomas sounded panicked, but that wasn't my concern. Stay at a hotel or something. Anyway, that's the situation. Also, I'm in the middle of work. Bye. I hung up the phone. They might be causing a commotion, but I didn't have time for it. They would probably give up and look for a hotel. However, I had underestimated the situation. In the middle of the social gathering, my phone rang. I excused myself and answered the phone, puzzled by the unfamiliar number. It turned out to be from the police. Excuse me, but apparently there was an intruder at my house, looking for an open window. They found one in the pet door. I didn't own a pet, so I hadn't noticed it before, but the house built by my company had one. Of course, I had no idea it even existed, so it wasn't locked. The intruder tried to enter through it and got stuck, unable to move forward or back, and was spotted by a passerby who then called the police. What a foolish burglar. Encountering such a fool could be dangerous. I was relieved I wasn't home at the time. The person claims to be your sister. Do you know anything about this? I went pale at those words. Sister. I don't have a sister. The only possibility was Thomas's sister, Betty. As expected, the police mentioned her name. I was mortified. Unbelievable that she tried to force her way through such a small entrance. It made family relations embarrassing. Anna, help me. Come pick me up. I could hear Betty causing a scene over the phone. What a nuisance. Although I could have gone to pick her up, I told the police, she may be my sister-in-law, but I can't forgive her for trying to break it in my house. Please thoroughly investigate what she intended to do in my home. The police responded to my complaint, and Betty was severely reprimanded. However, due to her lack of Italian language skills, there was a lot of confusion and stress, which made her break down crying. You must not cause trouble for your sister anymore, a police officer told her in simple English. Okay, Betty tearfully repeated. Getting caught by the police in Italy must have been a good lesson for her. Out of a desire for her to truly reflect, I didn't go to pick her up on the day she contacted me. The next day, thinking she might have reflected, I went to pick her up, and Betty broke down crying in relief. At that moment, I wondered, where was Thomas during all this? Only Betty was caught. Thomas was likely relaxing in a hotel, which I hadn't really considered. It turned out that while Betty was being arrested, Thomas was enjoying a meal alone, thinking Betty would bring money from my house and spending extravagantly at a restaurant. Oblivious to Betty's arrest, he ended up getting drunk and falling asleep at the restaurant. The restaurant, concerned about Thomas not responding, called the police, and he woke up in an unfamiliar police station. However, since my house and the restaurant were in different areas, Thomas was taken to a different police station. My wallet, my passport, where's my phone? Unfortunately, while he was unconscious, his bag was stolen and he lost his wallet, passport, and phone. Thomas couldn't speak Italian and was arrested for dining and dashing, unable to seek assistance and ending up in police custody. I only realized Thomas was missing after Betty was released and asked about him. After learning the details and following Betty's account to the restaurant, I found out from the owner that Thomas had been taken by the police. When we visited the police station, Thomas, looking pale and emotional, broke down in tears when he heard our names. It felt like déjà vu. I explained the situation to the restaurant owner, settled the bill, and apologized. Despite the theft, the owner, feeling sympathetic towards Thomas, decided not to press charges for the dine and dash. However, what followed was a hassle. We had to go through procedures for the lost passport and contact the embassy because of Betty and Thomas. I couldn't focus on work for several days. Just when I was about to explode with frustration, Thomas casually remarked, "I thought everything was settled. I'm glad it worked out. Let's go back to Anna's place for now." Their nonchalant attitude infuriated me. Glad? This is not okay for me at all. After causing so much trouble, how can you call this a good outcome? I'm sorry, but maybe it's best if you return to your own home and don't come here again. My outburst silenced them both. I'm filing for divorce this weekend, I declared firmly. Thomas reacted with shock, and Betty stood beside him, equally taken aback, glancing between us. There's no point in staying married to you. Betty moved in without asking, got arrested in Italy without knowing the language, and disrupted my work. It seemed they finally grasped the seriousness of my anger. With their heads down, they stayed silent, while onlookers chuckled at two adults being scolded by a woman. But my anger was far from subsiding. "So I'm divorcing you. You don't have any objections, right?" I asserted, feeling entitled to live my life freely after rescuing him from the police. Thomas reluctantly agreed, reflecting on his actions, and responded quietly. Initially, Thomas had requested a 4-day leave from work, but due to his arrest and lost passport, he missed his return flight by a wide margin. Without a phone, he couldn't extend his leave and completely overlooked his work responsibilities. What's worse, he hadn't shared any information about his ongoing project, intending to take all the credit himself. His delayed return and lack of communication caused him to miss a crucial meeting, resulting in the cancellation of important deals with a client. Despite the significant losses incurred by the company, Thomas was fired. Betty, furious over this situation, had a heated argument with Thomas. Originally, Thomas quitting his job and moving in as a housekeeper resembled what happened. However, things took a turn with Thomas divorcing me and losing his job. With no income provider, our home became a place of frequent and intense arguments. Why? I understand all of this thanks to Lisa sharing details with me. Children can't choose their parents, but if I could, I'd choose you over Mom, she told me. Divorcing Thomas meant that Lisa and I were no longer related by marriage, but she still reaches out to me for career advice and to discuss her mom, treating me like a sister. I'm glad she sees me that way. Even though we don't see each other often, I'm continuing to work in Italy. Originally, I planned to return to America after 2 years, but now I've decided to stay and continue working here. I've also developed a strong bond with a man I met locally. I'm ready to leave behind the difficult memories and the beautiful surroundings of Italy and pursue new happiness.
When a wife buys something, her husband thinks it belongs to him too. If he can't accept that, he suggests divorce. My husband Charles often tries to take things from me for no good reason. Once, he even wanted to give gifts I bought for my parents to his own family to make himself look good. When I confronted him about this, he looked shocked. Before I married Charles, my grandparents left me a valuable gift, a piece of property. They advised me to keep it a secret from Charles, even though he's my husband. They said I should keep quiet about having a source of income and enough money to live comfortably. I felt a bit sorry for Charles, but I chose to follow my grandparents' advice. After my grandfather, who had always taken care of me, passed away, I carried on with my life with Charles. Then, something happened. One day, when I checked the account where I saved money for our living expenses, I saw that $10,000 had been taken out. This account was mostly handled by me and meant to cover the cost of living that Charles and I shared. It was a significant amount, and I couldn't recall withdrawing it myself. It seemed inevitable that Charles was the one who had taken it out. That evening, when Charles returned home, I confronted him about it. "Hey, $10,000 are gone from our living expenses account. Do you know what happened to the money?" "Yeah, I lent it to my mom. She was in some trouble," he replied casually, confirming that Charles had indeed lent the money to my mother-in-law, Lisa. "And you didn't think to inform me beforehand? It's all right, though. It's money I earned, so it's not a big deal. We have savings, so losing that amount won't hurt us. If Lisa needed help, I understand why you did it, but it would have been nice to hear about it from you first. After all, the account is for both of us. If it had been his own personal account from when he was single, it would have been acceptable, but withdrawing a large sum from our joint account without discussing it was a bit too much." When I sighed heavily at Charles's selfishness, he frowned and gave me an irritated look. Fine. I'll tell you next time." Charles dismissed me, clearly annoyed, and quickly walked away to the bathroom. I felt uneasy about the situation. He hadn't acted like this when we first got married. He used to listen to me sincerely. Is this how relationships change over time? A few days later, I had no choice but to visit my in-laws' house to deliver a package that had been mistakenly delivered to our address. "Oh, Megan, thanks for making the trip all the way here. Why don't you come inside since you've come all this way?" I had planned to just drop off the package at the door, but I couldn't refuse my parents-in-law's invitation, so I ended up in their living room, having tea. While there, I couldn't help but notice various luxurious items: expensive cosmetics, glamorous clothes, health products. Oh my, our wonderful son gave these to me as gifts. Since there was $10,000 in the bank account anyway, it seemed natural to spend it this way. However, knowing that Lisa needed money and Charles had lent her that exact amount, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that all of it had been spent on her luxury items. As I quietly sipped my tea, not able to muster a smile, my in-laws' cheerful expressions faded, replaced by a look of concern that seemed almost threatening. "Our son is so kind and thoughtful, showering me with gifts. But what about you? Are you being a good wife to him? There's something suspicious going on." "We've heard things, my father-in-law said, his tone implying accusation. "He's always blamed by you for spending money on me," my mother-in-law chimed in. Now it all makes sense. They looked at me with apprehension, as if Charles had painted himself as a victim for doing something generous. I started feeling increasingly weary of both my in-laws and my husband. I never expected to be treated so poorly and overlooked like this. Finally, the idea of divorce began to take shape in my mind. I thought that if I left him, I could go back to my parents' home and use the savings from my passive income to help rebuild their lives. My parents' home is a 2-story house that was built over 30 years ago, before my brother was born. It used to accommodate our family of 5, but after my brother and I moved out, it became too large and difficult for my parents, who have trouble with their legs despite some modifications like ramps and handrails. A smaller single-story house would be much more suitable and comfortable for them. I immediately called my parents to discuss my plan to divorce Charles and rebuild their home. Surprisingly, they weren't shocked by the divorce news and were thrilled about the idea of renovating their house. Over the phone, they eagerly listened to my plans. "I'm so grateful that you're thinking of renovating it for us. Thank you. Even if we won't live there long, it's okay because you can inherit the house as it was built using your own earnings." "All right then, I'll start preparing and planning it step by step." "Don't worry, take it easy." My dad and mom's reassuring words lifted my spirits. So I began the process of renovating my parents' house, waiting to hear back from the construction company when suddenly Charles confronted me. "How could you use our savings to build a house without consulting me?" Sitting across from each other at the living room table, Charles slammed his fist down and yelled at me, completely disregarding my feelings. "Well, my parents will be living in the new house." "No, that's not possible because it was built specifically for my parents. You used our joint funds to build it, so my parents have a right to live there. Are you expecting 4 people to squeeze into that small 1-story house?" "Shut up. Just hand over the house to me," Charles yelled, banging the table loudly. I knew if I didn't mention my passive income, things would escalate even further. So I made up my mind to come clean. Actually, I have passive income. I've actually been saving from the real estate my grandparents left me as a gift. I've used that passive income to pay for the house, so none of our shared money was used. As I admitted this, feeling guilty for breaking my promise to my grandparents, Charles in front of me shook his shoulders and began banging the table even harder. "What kind of wife hides her income? You're playing with my money and hiding yours like this." As his anger flared and his face turned red, I realized why my grandparents had advised me to keep my passive income secret. Perhaps they already knew what kind of person Charles was. "I'll take the house as part of the divorce settlement. And remember, the house you built as my wife is also mine. I'm the head of this family, and if you defy me, I'll divorce you." I felt nothing but despair at Charles's demands and was thoroughly fed up with him. How could I have lived with someone like him without knowing who he truly was? I had planned to use my passive income when we might no longer rely solely on Charles's earnings. It was meant as a safety net in case I couldn't work due to injury or illness. I had intended to save it to sustain our life together and share it with Charles when the time was right. But now, I have no intention of spending that money on him anymore. Feel free to take it. I stood up, leaving the table and the house. I couldn't bear to be near Charles any longer. I decided to spend the night at a business hotel to calm down, intending to return home the next day. However, when I returned the next morning, Charles greeted me with a smug smile. He approached me, holding a sheet of paper he had concealed behind his back. It was divorce papers already filled out. You lied about having passive income, didn't you? You pretended to have it to cover up the fact that you were actually taking money from our joint property, didn't you? Charles' accusation bewildered me. I had told him the truth sincerely. I hadn't lied. It's true, I have passive income. Here you go again. I know you can't live without me, Charles sneered as he forcefully placed the divorce papers into my hand. Let me know when I can move in, okay? I'm off for a drink. With that, he patted my shoulder and left, humming in a cheerful mood. In that moment, I finally saw Charles for who he truly was. He hadn't changed. He had always looked down on me since the beginning of our marriage. He never truly considered my feelings. I wasted no time. I packed my things, completed the divorce papers right then and there, and left. I decided to stay with my parents temporarily and explain everything to them. We agreed that I would live with them until the new house was ready. The next day, I was dismayed to find my phone filled with missed calls from Charles. Shortly after, it rang again. Reluctantly, I answered, hoping this would be the last conversation I ever had with him. Hello. Hey. All your stuff is gone, you know. My husband's impatient tone left me with nothing but questions. He was the one who initiated the divorce, so why was he acting so flustered now that I had actually left? Huh? We're getting divorced, so it's normal for my things to be gone. I won't be coming back, so feel free to use the empty space however you like. I wondered if he sensed something different in my tone. There was silence from my husband for a few moments. Finally, it seemed he had realized that I indeed had passive income. Then, after another pause, he spoke in a surprisingly gentle voice I had never heard before. Hey, could you let my parents live in the new house? I don't mind staying with your parents, please. I already told you it's a small one-story house. Please understand. I plan to surprise my parents with it. His request left me speechless. What was he thinking? Wanting to give away a house he didn't even buy and call it a surprise? It seemed reckless beyond belief. You don't care about our savings at all, do you? I've been stressing over the money I give you as an allowance and what we save for living expenses, trying hard to manage everything. That's beside the point here. You're careless with money and leave all the hassle to others, then act like you did everything yourself when it comes to your parents, right? As I had meticulously prepared everything for my parents, my husband suddenly fell silent, fueling my frustration even more. It's shallow of you to act like you orchestrated it all and give the house to your parents. Ultimately, you've been trying to exploit my good intentions and take control of what's rightfully mine. There's no justification for you to trample on my feelings and intentions like this. I won't hand over the house I built with all my heart and soul for my parents just so you can show off to yours. I firmly rejected Charles's proposal, and he began to loudly rant in response. But husbands and wives are supposed to help each other. We're not married anymore, are we? I've already filed for divorce. On the same day my husband, now my ex-husband, handed me the divorce papers, I submitted them to the city office. He had wanted the divorce so eagerly, and I felt it was best to move on quickly. I was already in the process of reverting all the paperwork to what it was before we were married. My ex-husband said in disbelief, Yeah, you've already filed. Why act surprised when you're the one who wanted the divorce? Oh, I didn't expect you to actually leave. Let's start over. Let's talk and try to make things work this time. How could he suggest such a thing now? This is a man who used our savings for his own mother, threatened divorce, and mocked me until the very end. I had no desire to reconcile with someone like him. No, thank you. Please give my regards to your parents, I said cheerfully before hanging up on Charles. The next day, I continued to receive voicemails and messages from him, insisting we could start over and professing his love. But I sensed his motives were only about my property and wealth. To sever all ties, I promptly blocked him and his family from contacting me. Meanwhile, the new house was completed, and my parents and I moved in, enjoying our newfound comfort. Later, I met a mutual friend who knew Charles as well. I explained that we had divorced. My friend expressed sympathy and shared what had been happening with Charles and his family. Firstly, my ex-husband abruptly submitted his resignation letter at work, claiming he no longer needed to work hard because he had acquired real estate. He then disappeared, making himself unreachable to his colleagues. However, the next day, he apparently tried to retract his resignation. His bosses understandably reprimanded him for vanishing without notice and the disruption caused by his sudden resignation letter. The company questioned him about his behavior, but Charles couldn't admit he was relying on my income, so he attempted to fabricate an explanation. Eventually, though, the truth about our divorce came to light and his lies were exposed. As a result, the company refused to reconsider his employment. Charles, who mocked my passive income as probably fake, was actually trying to benefit from my earnings and impressed his parents by giving them a house as a gift. He didn't consider me or our future at all. When I think about that, I no longer have any feelings for my ex-husband. In fact, I feel relieved. I heard that he returned to his parents' home, where they must have been tough on him because he's now scrambling to find a new job. However, his departure from his last job has made it difficult for him to secure employment. It's safe to say he's facing the consequences of his actions. As for me, I live happily with my parents in a home I built myself. I have a job that I love, and I'm enjoying life. I had been saving my passive income for Charles and our future, but now I'll use it to support those who have supported me. How much did you get from the inheritance? That's what my husband Simon asked me the night of my father's funeral. I heard your father left $3 million. So I'll ask again, how much did you get? I felt uneasy right away. I was still grieving, and Simon's question made me anxious. So I lied. I got nothing. There's no inheritance for me. It looks like only my sister and mother got something, I added. Simon smiled broadly at that. I knew it. Your parents thought you were incompetent and didn't care about you at all. I'm glad I was right. What? I want a divorce. I can't handle being with someone who's poor now. I've already chosen who I'm going to marry next, so I want you to leave my life. With those words, Simon made me sign the divorce papers. He and his family laughed at me, thinking I was miserable. But they couldn't have been more wrong. No one will ever understand how relieved I felt when Simon betrayed me. My name is Jane. I come from a family of 4, including my younger sister Kim. Kim and I never got along well, not since we were kids. My mom, Anne, always took Kim's side and defended her every chance she got. It made me feel really lonely, but I eventually got used to it. My dad, Dan, who was the only one who supported me and could help, was always busy with work and rarely home. Growing up, despite being at home a lot, I felt deeply lonely. Even as an adult, life at home never changed. I couldn't go to college because we couldn't afford it, but once I started working, I found out Kim was going to a private college. Kim is so bright, it would be a waste not to send her, they said. Jane, you're not as sharp or smart as Kim. It would be a waste for you to go to college. Since you're an adult with a job now, you should contribute to the household. And you should also pay for Kim's tuition. You're her older sister. It's only natural for you to work and support her, my mom said, acting like this was perfectly normal. I had always endured unfair treatment, but this time, it made me furious, and tears started streaming down my face. Seeing me cry, Kim looked at me disdainfully and said, "It's your own fault for being incompetent, isn't it? You're less attractive than me and you get worse grades. You should at least try harder. If you can't even manage that, then you're truly worthless." I couldn't stand the toxic atmosphere anymore, so I moved out of my parents' house when I started working. Having to do chores every day was tough, but living alone wasn't hard at all. In fact, it felt great to be independent. At first, my dad sent me a bit of money to help out, but after about 6 months, it stopped. Instead, I got a letter from my mom. "Dad's been sending you money without permission. You don't deserve it since you never paid for your sister's school or sent us any money. I'll send you an invoice for what you owe us soon. You need to pay back every cent. Stop stealing." My mom, still hating me, sent an invoice for exactly what my dad sent, calling it repayment. I was too uncomfortable to argue, so I paid up, moved to a new place in secret. A few years later, I married Simon, a coworker, and cut ties with my parents for good. So I went back to my parents' house to tell them about my marriage. When I returned, I was shocked to see my father. He had always worked hard, but now he looked much older. His back was bent, and he seemed to struggle just to stand. "Oh, so you're back." I asked my mother about my father. "What's wrong with him?" She sneered at me. "Your father injured his back last year and can't work anymore. He's always at home now, getting in my way. He's so lazy, he can barely move. He's as useless as you, Jane. Simon was taken aback by my mother's words, but his eyes brightened when he saw my sister Kim. Wow, you're Jane's sister? You're really beautiful. It's hard to believe you two are related. Since starting college, Kim had become even more self-centered. She dressed in expensive clothes and dyed her hair in flashy colors that were quite embarrassing. Despite being an adult, she still acted like a student, which reflected her attitude towards studying. This guy's your husband, Jane. He's pretty cool and handsome. He doesn't seem like your type at all, Jane. Honestly, I feel sorry for you, Simon, my sister said sweetly to Simon, touching him in a way that was hard to miss. It hurt to see that, but what hurt more was seeing Simon so happy and excited about her attention. Anyway, I don't plan on staying here long. I'm going to marry Simon. I'm cutting ties with all of you. Well, if you're going to cut me off, can you at least wait until I'm done taking care of your father? My mom said wearily between bites of her snacks. I need to take care of him, but I really don't want to. Kim shouldn't have to go through this either. It's her college life, and it'd be a shame to make her waste time on such a trivial, annoying matter, right? So Jane, it's your responsibility to take care of your father. You're both incompetent, so you'll get along just fine. My mom's words infuriated me, but I couldn't ignore my father's needs. From then on, I had to visit my parents' house often to look after him. Once I started helping out, I noticed neither my mom nor Kim had jobs. Kim didn't work part-time, and Mom stayed home since Dad got sick. Yet, they ate out and shopped a lot. I was shocked when I found out they'd taken Dad's bank book without permission and spent his savings like it was normal. Dad knew but didn't say anything. Dad, they'll keep doing this if we don't stop them. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Even if I told you, Jane, they wouldn't think they did anything wrong or apologize. I didn't want to burden you any further. You've been through enough. My dad always worked hard for our family and loved me dearly. I wanted to help him however I could. Just as I was thinking of how to help, I got a call from the hospital where Dad was taken after collapsing. I rushed to my parents' house before heading to the hospital. Mom and Kim were casually watching TV, unconcerned. The hospital called about Dad collapsing. Why are you both just sitting here? It's an exaggeration to say he collapsed. He fell in the hallway and hit his head. The ambulance took him to the hospital, so it's up to you now. We need to go to the hospital. I'm worried about Dad. Shut up. If he doesn't make it, the insurance will cover it. Why are you getting so emotional? My mother dismissed me and turned back to the TV. Disgusted, I left them both and hurried to the hospital. At the hospital, my father lay in bed, connected to tubes, barely conscious. As he drifted in and out of awareness, he managed to speak softly. I'm sorry for this sudden turn. I feel like I'm being punished. I failed as a father because I couldn't protect you from our family. Those were his last words before he closed his eyes. Dad, none of that matters. I love you. Please get better, I pleaded, holding his hand tightly. But he didn't respond. A week later, a lawyer called me about my father's will. He'd informed me that it included details about his inheritance. According to the will, I, Jane, was to inherit $3 million. $3 million. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, my father had another bank book hidden away, separate from the one my mother had taken, with $3 million in it. He left a note saying he wouldn't tell anyone else about it, his way of looking out for me even after he was gone. His kindness touched me deeply once more. I had to return to my parents' house to retrieve the hidden bank book. My mother and sister were waiting at the door, acting like they owned the place. What are you doing here now? Trying to scavenge things because Dan died? How despicable. Everything in this house belongs to me and my mother. The house, the car, everything. Don't come here acting like a thief. I knew I couldn't discuss my inheritance with people who wouldn't listen to me anyway. Wait a minute. I'm just here to collect father's keepsakes, and shouldn't I inherit something as well? My mother then produced a document and showed it to me. It was another will stating that my mother and sister would inherit everything from my father's estate. The handwriting looked suspiciously like my sister's, not my father's unique style. I couldn't read the will very well since Kim's handwriting isn't very clear. Are you suggesting this is Dad's will? It doesn't matter what you think. This is the will. I've already informed all our relatives and neighbors about it. You can't dispute it now. Refusing to let me inside, knowing I recognized the will as a forgery, my mother blocked me from entering the house. Defeated, I returned home that day, where Simon was waiting for me. "Were you at your parents' house?" "If you had told me, I would have come with you. I wanted to meet Kim." "Why are you so interested, Simon? This doesn't concern you." "I went there to receive my inheritance from Dad, but they kicked me out." "Wow, how much did everyone inherit from your father?" "I'm not sure of the total, but he owned the house, land, and everything, so it's quite substantial." "I see. How much do you get, Jane?" I stopped myself. I couldn't tell him the truth. My gut feeling said there was no inheritance for me. It was all going to my mother and sister. Hearing this, Simon grabbed divorce papers from his room and handed them to me. "I knew it. I knew you wouldn't get anything. You're really tied to that family. Well, with a perfect sister like that, I guess it's no surprise, right? But to inherit nothing, how much do they despise you?" "I want a divorce now because there's no benefit for me if we stay together. Honestly, I've been in contact with your sister Kim a lot lately, and you're just in my way." Simon had already signed his part of the divorce papers, so naturally, I signed them too. I fought hard to hide my smile as I watched Simon happily carry the divorce papers to the city office. It felt like the last time I'd see him smile like that, and that goes for my mother and sister too. It was the moment when karma caught up with those who had tormented my father and me all those years. Later that day, I met with the lawyer who handled my father's will and asked him to accompany me to my parents' house. There, when I showed my mother and sister the real will, their usual calm expressions turned pale as they read it over and over again. "That's a lie. I have a will here that clearly states only Kim and I are supposed to inherit." "Then let's settle this with a handwriting analysis. If it's proven the fake will was intentionally made, you could face charges of fraud. Are you okay with that?" The lawyer's challenge left my mother speechless. I've also heard from Dan about many things. He said even as his health declined, you neglected him, sold his belongings without permission, and did as you pleased. Kim, you were involved in risky behavior with men and gambling, paying off debts with his personal bank book without permission. Due to this misconduct, both of you have been disinherited. If you interfere with Jane's inheritance rights, we'll pursue legal action against you as well. As the lawyer finished, both my mother and sister sat there in disbelief. I decided to retrieve my father's hidden bank book and leave their house for good. Finally, I was completely free from my family. After that, Simon, unaware of the truth, apparently confessed to my sister and started dating her. My mother and sister, keeping the inheritance issues hidden, quickly married him to support their lifestyle and used him like an ATM. Simon, oblivious to their schemes, bought several luxury cars and quit his job, relying on what he thought was their inheritance. Eventually, Simon began to suspect something was wrong. When he realized there was no inheritance, he urgently contacted me. "Jane, I was mistaken. You're all I have. I want to start over." "Well, I don't need you. Besides, you have Kim now. Take care of your wife properly, okay?" I said calmly and hung up. In fact, just minutes before Simon called, I received a call from Kim as well. "You've destroyed my life." Simon quit his job and went on a spending spree as soon as we got married. "I can't believe I married a man who only cares about money. He's ruined our family name. What are you going to do about it?" I responded calmly to my sister, who was shouting hysterically. "Kim, you're just as money-minded as him. You two are a perfect match, really. And I heard you and Simon got along very well while he and I were married. You should be happy your love worked out. I'll file for compensation for the affair later, though. From now on, let's communicate through our lawyers. I never want to hear from you again. But I'm your sister. You're not treating me like family. Don't make me laugh. You were the one who didn't treat me like family." With those words, I ended the call with my sister, blocked her number, and never heard from her again. I finally felt free. With my father's inheritance, I built a house and moved in. I found a new job as an office clerk and now enjoy a busy but satisfying life on my own. Sometimes I feel lonely, but I have my memories of my father to comfort me. "I'm heading out now, Dad." I felt my father's gentle smile watching over me as I looked at his picture hanging on the wall of my home. As I sat at my parents' Thanksgiving table, surrounded by the familiar sights of my childhood home, I felt a rare calm. These visits, now that I was 60, provided a peaceful escape from the tense atmosphere at my own house. My daughter Emma chatted happily with her grandmother, their voices filling the room with joy. It was a stark difference from the quiet, strained conversations I often had with Richard, my husband. Suddenly, my phone buzzed loudly, interrupting the warmth of the moment. Richard's name appeared on the screen, instantly making me uneasy. Taking a deep breath, I excused myself from the table. "Sorry, it's Richard. I'll just take this in the kitchen." But as I stood up, I accidentally activated the speakerphone. "Hey Elaine, enjoying yourself there?" "Well, don't bother coming back." Richard's voice sounded oddly cheerful, echoing through the room. I froze, holding the phone as his words hung in the air. "What do you mean, Richard?" "Oh, I've decided it's time for a change. I've moved Emma's stuff into the house. There's no room for you anymore." The room fell into silence. Emma dropped her fork with a loud clatter, her eyes wide in disbelief. "Richard, what are you talking about?" My voice trembled as I spoke, my heart racing. "It's simple. Emma doesn't want to come home because of you. Without you around, she can live the life she deserves, like when she was younger. So, you need to leave." Emma stood up suddenly, her face flushing with anger. "Dad, what is going on?" "Stay out of this, Emma." Richard's voice cut her off, icy and firm. "This is between me and your mother." My cheeks burned with a mix of shame and anger. "You want me to leave our home just like that?" "Yeah, find some shelter or whatever. It's not my problem." The call ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence. My mother reached out, her hand trembling. "Elaine, honey." Before she could finish, Emma burst into bitter laughter. "He's lost it, Grandma. Completely lost it." Inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions, shame, anger, and a strange feeling of freedom. He better be ready. I thought to myself, this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. That night, lying in my childhood bed with moonlight casting shadows, memories flooded back. Richard and I hadn't always been distant and cold. There was a time when his eyes held warmth and his touch felt safe. I met Richard when I was in my late 20s. He was charming, confident, and seemed to have all the answers. His charisma drew me in, and within a year of meeting, we were married. A whirlwind romance that felt like a fairy tale. But the fairy tale began to crack soon after Emma was born. Richard adored our daughter, but as his love for her grew, his feelings towards me seemed to diminish. It was as if there was only room in his heart for one person. "Elaine, can't you see? You're suffocating her. Give her space," he would scold. Whenever I tried to be part of Emma's life, his words hurt, though I thought he was just being an overly protective father. As Emma grew older, Richard's resentment towards me deepened. The man who once cherished me now barely acknowledged my existence, except to criticize. "Why can't you be more like Emma? She's only 10 and already so independent," he'd sneer. I remember the night Emma, at 15, won a school award. We were supposed to celebrate together as a family, but Richard turned it into a lecture. "Elaine, why can't you achieve anything like our daughter? You're wasting your life." His words pierced like daggers. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling years of his disdain weighing on me. It wasn't just his words. It was the dismissive looks, the heavy sighs, the way he'd turn away when I entered a room. I had become invisible and insignificant in my own home. That night, lying in the silence, something stirred inside me. Richard's callousness, his disregard for our life together, it ignited a determination in me. I refused to let him erase me from my own story. Turning on my side, I closed my eyes, but sleep eluded me. The shadows seemed to whisper, urging me to rise up, to reclaim myself. And deep down, I knew I was ready to take that step. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound clarity I hadn't felt in years. During breakfast, Mom tried to talk about Richard's call, but I changed the subject. I wasn't ready to confront that issue just yet, and Emma sensed my hesitation and didn't push. As we tidied up, my mind wandered back to the years with Richard. His controlling behavior wasn't limited to our daughter. It permeated every part of our lives, tightening like a vice around my freedom. "Elaine, don't stay late at work. You need to be home to cook," he would insist, dismissing my job at the library that I loved. His rules were unpredictable and meant to keep me off balance. If I wore something he didn't like, he'd scoff. Trying to impress someone. Focus on being a better wife and mother. Even my friendships weren't safe. "You spend too much time with Linda Sheck, a bad influence," he once said, cutting through years of friendship. But it wasn't just the control, it was the humiliation at social events. He'd undermine me with fake compliments, often in front of Emma. Elaine tries her best, but you know she's not the brightest bulb. He'd laugh, his words a painful reminder of his contempt. Emma witnessed it all. At first she tried to defend me, but Richard's influence was overpowering. "Mom, just ignore him," she'd whisper, her eyes filled with frustration. I couldn't forget the day Emma left for college. Richard glowed with pride, yet there was a coldness in his gaze when he looked at me. "See, Elaine, this is what happens when you raise a child right. She's not like you, thank God." Those words cut deeper than anything, implying I had no role in our daughter's upbringing, that my years of love and sacrifice were worthless. As these memories swirled in my mind, a simmering anger rose within me. Enough was enough. I wouldn't let Richard control my life any longer. The phone call had been the final straw. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. I looked at Emma, seeing her determination reflected back at me. "Emma, there's something important I need to do when we get home. It's going to change everything, but I need you to trust me." Emma nodded firmly. "I'm with you, Mom." Completely. The drive back was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts, knowing we were heading towards a crucial confrontation with Richard. Once home, I excused myself to my room under the guise of unpacking, but really to make a call that would set everything in motion. I dialed the number of a divorce attorney I had discreetly noted down months ago. My hands trembled as the call connected. "Hello, this is Elaine Richardson. I need to discuss filing for divorce." Mr. Adams, the lawyer, was calm and understanding. "I can help you through this, Mrs. Richardson. It sounds like you're dealing with a challenging situation." As I recounted Richard's behavior over the years, Mr. Adams listened attentively. "We can file for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse. It seems like you have a strong case." Feeling empowered, I responded firmly, "I'm proceeding with this, and I want him to face consequences both legally and financially." Mr. Adams reassured me, "We'll work to ensure you receive what you're entitled to." After the call, a mix of fear and exhilaration washed over me. For the first time in years, I was taking charge of my life. Later that evening, Richard returned home, his demeanor smug and victorious. "Back so soon. Realize you have nowhere else to go." His words stung, but I stood my ground. "I went to my parents' house, Richard. Remember the place you practically forced me into?" He scoffed. "I did us a favor. Emma and I are better off without you." "That's where you're mistaken," I said firmly. "Emma isn't a pawn in your games, and I'm not your captive anymore." Richard's face twisted in anger. "What nonsense are you talking? You think you can survive without me?" Meeting his gaze, my resolve remained steady. "Watch me." Emma entered the room, her expression showing determination. "Dad, you've crossed a line. Mom doesn't deserve this." Richard sneered. "Oh, now you're on her side? I thought you understood, Emma. Your mother is worthless." Emma's eyes flashed with anger. "No, Dad. The only worthless thing here is your cruelty. We're done living under your control." As we stood together against Richard's hostility, I knew we had reached a turning point. The battle lines were drawn, and I was prepared to fight for my freedom. The morning after our confrontation, the atmosphere in the house felt tense. Richard's usual arrogance was heightened, as if he was challenging us to defy him. While making breakfast, my hands trembled slightly, but my determination held strong. At the table, Richard broke the silence with his usual condescension. "So, Elaine, have you finally realized your place? Ready to beg for forgiveness?" I kept my voice steady. "There's no need for me to beg, Richard. It's you who should be reflecting on your actions." He laughed bitterly. "You've always been out of touch, Elaine, but this is a new low." Emma, who had been quiet until then, spoke up firmly. "Dad, this isn't a joke. Mom is serious about filing for divorce." Richard's face twisted through confusion, disbelief, and then erupted into anger. "Divorce? You think you can just walk away from me after everything I've done for this family?" "It's because of what you've done," I interjected, my voice firm. "Years of belittling, controlling, and humiliating me. I won't tolerate it any longer." Richard slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with rage. "I built this family. Without me, you're nothing." Emma stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. "You didn't build this family, Dad. You've torn it apart. And Mom isn't just something. You've treated her like nothing." His eyes darted between us, a wild intensity growing. "You're ganging up on me, your own husband, your own father." This isn't about sides, Richard, I said evenly, the turmoil churned inside me. What you've done is unforgivable. Richard's bitter laugh filled the room. You think you can leave and everything will be fine. You have no clue what's coming. I met his gaze firmly. I know exactly what I'm facing, freedom from you. Emma stood beside me, resolute. We're done with your control, Dad. It's over. Richard abruptly stood, his chair crashing behind him. You'll regret this, both of you. You have no idea what I'm capable of. As he stormed out, the tension he left behind was suffocating. But in that tension, there was also a profound sense of liberation. The battle had begun, and I was ready to fight for my freedom, my dignity, and my daughter's future. The days after our confrontation with Richard were a whirlwind of activity. I met with Mr. Adams multiple times, meticulously planning the divorce proceedings. We'll ensure you receive what's rightfully yours, Elaine, both financially and legally, Mr. Adams assured me. Richard's reaction to the divorce papers was explosive. He barged into the house one evening, papers in hand, his face a mask of rage. You're really going through with this? Do you even understand what you're doing, Elaine? I faced him calmly, despite my inner turmoil. Yes, Richard, I do. For the first time in years, I'm making a decision for myself. Richard laughed mockingly. You really believe you can survive without me? You're nothing without my money, my support. I'm not afraid of being on my own, Richard. I'm more afraid of spending another day under the same roof as you, I replied firmly. Emma, hearing the argument, came downstairs. What's going on? Your mother has lost her mind, Richard sneered. She thinks she can just take half of everything I've worked hard for. It's not just what you've earned, Dad. It's what Mom has endured all these years. She deserves every penny and more. Emma shot back. Richard's gaze hardened. Don't be naive, Emma. This will destroy us all. No, Dad, it will liberate us, especially Mom. As the days stretched into weeks, our home became a tense, silent battlefield. Richard relocated to the guest room, his presence casting a heavy shadow over everything. Despite his attempts to sway me, my decision was resolute. The date of our first court hearing arrived. Sitting in the courtroom, waiting for proceedings to commence, I felt an unusual calmness wash over me. I knew deep down that I was making the right choice, not just for myself, but for Emma too. Richard, however, appeared visibly nervous. When his lawyer broached the topic of a settlement, a small smile crept onto my face. Richard, who had always prided himself on control, was now at the mercy of the legal system. As the judge reviewed our case, Richard grew visibly paler. When the judge turned to me and asked if I wished to add anything, I took a steadying breath. Your Honor, for years I endured emotional abuse and manipulation at the hands of my husband. I seek not vengeance, but justice, for myself and for my daughter. The judge nodded solemnly. I understand, Mrs. Richardson. This court will ensure a fair and just resolution. Leaving the courtroom, I caught Richard's defeated expression. It was enough for me to know that while the battle wasn't over, I had won this initial round. I was prepared for whatever lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, my life felt like it was constantly under scrutiny, analyzed by lawyers and the court. But with each passing day, I felt stronger, more in control of my own destiny. Richard's attempts to intimidate me grew more desperate and less effective over time. The final court hearing became a day I both dreaded and eagerly awaited. As Richard and I sat across from each other in the courtroom, I couldn't help but reflect on the man I once loved, now a stranger filled with bitterness. The judge's voice was unwavering as he delivered the verdict. The court rules in favor of Mrs. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, you are obligated to pay alimony and half of your assets. Richard's face twisted in shock and anger. He abruptly stood up, his chair crashing to the ground. This is ridiculous. She doesn't deserve a single penny. Mr. Richardson, control yourself, the judge admonished firmly. The court's decision is final. As we exited the courtroom, Richard's parting words dripped with venom. You'll regret this, Elaine. You think you've won, but you haven't seen the end of me. But I no longer feared him. His once cutting words now sounded hollow and powerless. Over the following months, I secured a small apartment near Emma's place. I began a new job at a local library, a place that always brought me solace. The alimony from Richard provided me with a financial independence I hadn't known in years. Emma and I grew closer, our relationship no longer overshadowed by Richard's presence. She flourished in her career and personal life, a stark contrast to the fearful young woman she once was. As for Richard, the last I heard, he was leading a diminished life, his pride and finances greatly reduced. His attempts to reconnect with Emma and me were met with silence. The man who once wielded so much power over us now exists only as a memory, a faint echo of the past. Often, I sit on my balcony with a cup of tea, gazing out at the tranquil neighborhood. Here, I found a sense of peace and purpose that eluded me for so long. Emma visits frequently, and we share conversations about everything and nothing. Our bond, forged in adversity, has grown unbreakable. Looking ahead, I face the future with hope and a profound sense of freedom. Emerging from the shadows of my past, I've grown stronger and more resilient. I've come to understand that sometimes the most challenging battles lead to the greatest triumphs. As for Richard, he remains nothing more than a distant echo, a reminder of a life I once lived and the strength I discovered in leaving it behind. I lay on the cold kitchen floor, holding my side where I felt sharp pain spreading through my body. It felt like a knife was twisting inside me. My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, stood nearby, her small face showing how scared she was. "Mommy, are you okay?" Lily's voice shook, barely louder than a whisper. I tried to sound calm despite the pain. "I'll be fine, honey, just a bad stomach ache," I lied, trying to hide how serious it was. Footsteps echoed through the hallway as my husband David appeared in the doorway. His face showed annoyance instead of concern. He was ready for his trip, holding his suitcase. "What's going on, Evelyn? Why are you on the floor?" David asked, sounding annoyed. "I think it's appendicitis, David. It's really bad. We need to go to the hospital," I managed to say, each word hurting me. He scoffed. "Appendicitis? You're probably overreacting. It's likely just indigestion." "But David, I really think—" My words were cut off by a sharp pain, making me wince. David checked his watch, clearly impatient. "I can't miss this trip with Rachel. Just call a taxi or something." I couldn't believe it. "David, I can't even move. Lily's here. I need you," I begged, desperation in my voice. He shook his head, not caring. "I'm sure it's nothing. Call if it gets worse." And with that, he left, his suitcase trailing behind him. I was left alone in pain with Lily. Lily's small hands found mine, her tears matching my own. "Mommy, don't be sick. You have to be okay." I gathered what little strength I had and pulled Lily close. "I'm here, darling. Mommy's here." With David gone, I knew I had to act. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and called the only person I knew I could count on, my brother Michael. The phone rang, its sound piercing the quiet kitchen. "Hello," Michael's voice came through, a beacon of hope. "Michael, it's Evelyn. I need help. I think it's appendicitis. I can't move and Lily is scared," I managed to say, each word a struggle. There was a brief silence, then Michael's voice, calm and steady. "I'm on my way. Hold tight, Evelyn. I'll be there soon." Leaning against the cold tile floor, I closed my eyes, trying to endure the pain. Lily nestled close to me, a small comfort in the midst of turmoil. In that moment, a determination grew inside me. David's abandonment during my crisis wouldn't be forgotten. It was a deep hurt, a betrayal that marked a turning point. As I waited for Michael, one thing became clear: things would change. In the hospital bed later, surrounded by sterile walls and beeping machines, a sense of calm settled in. The surgery for my appendicitis went well, but David's emotional absence still stung. I had called my parents to care for Lily while I recovered, their voices filled with concern and unspoken questions about David's whereabouts. 3 days later, I was back home, the physical pain now a dull reminder of the recent ordeal. Lily greeted me eagerly, her face lighting up at my return. "Mommy, you're back. Are you all better now?" Her innocent question warmed my heart. "I'm getting there, sweetie," I replied, hugging her tightly, grateful for her presence. The peace of our reunion was shattered the next day by the slam of the front door. David and his sister Rachel burst in, their voices filled with frustration. "Why didn't you pick us up yesterday? We had to spend extra on a taxi and train fares." David's accusatory voice rang out as he entered the living room. I felt a surge of anger at his boldness. "Welcome back. Must have been quite a journey," I said coldly, locking eyes with him. David halted, taken aback by my icy reception. Even Rachel seemed surprised by the tension. "What's with the attitude, Evelyn?" David demanded. I couldn't hold back anymore. "While you were enjoying your trip, I was in a hospital," I said, my voice steady but simmering with anger. "And you, Rachel, always demanding David's time without considering his family." Rachel flushed and David appeared bewildered. "What are you talking about? You were fine, right?" he replied, sounding dismissive. "It's not just about being okay, David. It's about being there when your family needs you," I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Before David could respond, the living room door swung open, revealing Michael, our parents, and David's parents, 14 eyes, filled with varying degrees of anger and disappointment, fixed on David and Rachel. "Why is everyone here?" David's voice faltered, his confidence waning under their collective glare. Taking a deep breath, I channeled my pain and betrayal into words. "David, you left Lily and me alone when we needed you the most. I had to go to the hospital, and you weren't there. I've told everything to our families." David seemed to shrink under the weight of my words, his usual bravado absent. His eyes darted around, searching for support but finding none. "It's not just about this one incident, David. It's about all the times you've prioritized Rachel over your own family," my brother Michael added, his disappointment evident in his voice. Rachel, typically confident, appeared uneasy, shifting her gaze between the floor and the upset faces around her. David attempted to defend himself, offering excuses and justifications. The confrontation grew heated, tension thick in the air. But for me, it marked a turning point. I realized I couldn't continue living in the shadow of David's neglect. It was time for change, time to assert myself and protect Lily. The meeting concluded without resolution, but the message was clear. I had the support of both our families, and David's careless facade had been shattered. As they departed, David's parents glanced at me with sympathy, silently acknowledging their son's shortcomings. That night, as I lay in bed, the events of the day replayed in my mind. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, disappointment, but also a newfound strength. David had revealed his true self, and I knew it was time for me to take charge of my life. The days following the confrontation were tense with unspoken words. David tried to act as if nothing had changed, but the atmosphere between us was heavy. I spent that time reflecting, realizing the depth of my discontent and the necessity for change. The decision I reached wasn't easy, but it felt crucial, like a breath of fresh air after being stifled for so long. One evening, while David casually flipped through TV channels on the couch, I approached him with a folder in hand. My heart raced, but my determination held firm. "David, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. He glanced up, a hint of annoyance crossing his face. "What now, Evelyn?" I took a deep breath and handed him the folder. "I want a divorce." David stared at me, disbelief and mockery flashing across his expression. "Divorce? That's absurd, Evelyn. You're blowing things out of proportion." I shook my head, feeling a surge of empowerment. "It's not an exaggeration. I've thought long and hard about this. You've consistently prioritized Rachel over me and Lily. I can't continue like this." David sneered. "You think you can manage alone? Don't be naive, Evelyn." His words were meant to hurt, but I stood firm. "I'm not naive, David. I understand what this means, but I'd rather face uncertainty than continue feeling invisible in my own marriage." He laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Good luck, Evelyn. You'll regret this once you realize how tough it is out there." I felt my anger rise, but I kept my composure. "I won't. This is my decision, and I'm sticking to it." For a moment, David seemed like he might argue further, but then he shrugged, a smug smirk on his face. "Fine, have it your way. But remember, I warned you." As he turned back to the TV, dismissing me once again, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. There was fear, certainly, but also a powerful sense of liberation. I was finally taking charge of my life, stepping out of the shadows. The next day, I started the legal process for divorce. It was overwhelming with all the paperwork and legal steps, but I was determined. My parents and Michael were supportive, offering help and encouragement. During this time, David's true nature became clearer. He was dismissive and uncooperative, trying to intimidate me into giving up. But I stood my ground, strengthened by my family's support and my growing sense of strength. As time went on, David's facade began to crack. The charming, confident man I married revealed himself to be selfish and manipulative, his true self exposed. The divorce proceedings were challenging, but I faced them bravely, each forward step a testament to my newfound determination. I was no longer the woman who lay on the kitchen floor, ignored and in pain. I was reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my happiness. The divorce process was exhausting, marked by David's constant attempts to undermine and demean me. In our meetings, he would sneer and make hurtful remarks about my parenting and my future without him. But instead of letting his words defeat me, they fueled my determination to break free from his toxic influence. "Enjoy your struggles, Evelyn," David taunted in one of our final meetings. "You'll soon see how good you had it with me." His arrogance infuriated me, but I remained composed. I'd rather face challenges every day than spend another moment with someone who has so little regard for his family, I replied firmly. David's smug demeanor briefly faltered, replaced by a flicker of anger. He quickly masked it with a scoff, but I could sense my words had struck a nerve. The day the divorce was finalized brought a strange mix of relief and nervousness. I was finally free from David, yet the road ahead seemed daunting. However, as I walked out of the courthouse, a wave of liberation washed over me. In the weeks following our divorce, David's life began to unravel. His neglectful behavior and our separation became the gossip of his workplace. Colleagues who had once admired him now looked at him with pity and disdain. His charming facade had crumbled, exposing the pettiness and selfishness beneath. News of our divorce spread throughout our community, largely due to my cousin, who was well connected in our neighborhood. David, who had always cared deeply about his image and reputation, found himself the subject of hushed conversations and judgmental stares. Rachel also faced criticism. Her role in our marital problems was now public knowledge, and friends and neighbors began to regard her with suspicion and disapproval. The bond she had with David, once unbreakable in her eyes, now seemed strained and uneasy. One evening, while picking up Lily from school, I overheard a heated argument between David and Rachel outside their house. Their voices dripped with blame and resentment. "It's your fault we're in this mess, Rachel," David yelled, his frustration palpable. "How dare you blame me? You're the one who couldn't hold your family together." Rachel shot back, her voice filled with anger. Their argument was a stark contrast to the united front they once presented. The discord sowed by their actions had finally come to fruition, and now they were facing the consequences. As I walked away with Lily, I felt a sense of vindication. David and Rachel were now grappling with the results of their selfish choices. It was a tough lesson, but one they had brought upon themselves. That night, as Lily slept peacefully in her room, I sat by the window reflecting on the past few months. The journey had been challenging, but it had brought me to a place of strength and self-respect. I had fought for my dignity and for Lily's future. Although the future was uncertain, I felt prepared to confront it with newfound confidence. In the aftermath of the divorce, life settled into a new rhythm, one that was quieter yet more fulfilling. The weight of my unhappy marriage had lifted, replaced by a newfound sense of independence. I began rebuilding my life step by step, with Lily by my side. My first priority was finding a job. The gap in my resume from years spent focusing on motherhood was a concern, but I was determined. After several interviews, I secured a position at a small accounting firm. The firm, led by a supportive woman who valued working mothers, offered a flexible and understanding environment. It was an ideal fit for me. Lily embraced the changes with the resilience that only children possess. She started kindergarten, making new friends and eagerly diving into learning. Her laughter and lively conversations filled our home with happiness, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere of the past. Yet despite these positive changes, reminders of my past with David lingered. One afternoon, while dropping Lily off at school, I overheard a group of parents whispering, "That's her, Evelyn. Her husband left her because he couldn't stand being around her anymore," one of them said. Their words stung, but I held my head high. The gossip and judgment were small prices to pay for the freedom and peace I now had. Meanwhile, David's life continued to unravel. His pride took a significant hit, and his once flawless reputation was now tarnished. I heard from mutual acquaintances that he had moved back in with his parents, a fact he tried to conceal but eventually became known. Rachel's situation wasn't any better. Her interference in our marriage had isolated her from many friends. The once close siblings were now barely on speaking terms, their relationship strained by blame and regret. As for me, I found solace in the unwavering support of my family. My brother Michael had moved closer to us, his presence a constant source of comfort. My parents showered Lily with love, their affection soothing the wounds of the past. One day, while savoring coffee in my kitchen, I reflected on the journey I had endured, the pain, the struggle, and ultimately, the liberation. It had all brought me to this moment of peace. I hadn't just survived. I had emerged stronger and more self-assured. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Opening it, I found David standing there, wearing a look of defeat. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone," he said, his apology, though belated, validating my decision. "Thank you, David," I replied gently, "but it's too late. I've moved on." As I closed the door on David and the life we once shared, a sense of closure washed over me. That chapter of my life had ended, and a new one was beginning. In this new chapter, I was the author of my own story, free to shape my future as I saw fit. Lily's voice called out from the living room, and a smile spread across my face. I walked towards her, eager to embrace the life that lay ahead, a life brimming with possibilities and hope.